Now, I'm going to say that at one point in our lives, specifically during middle school in computer lab, you've just been doing your work and then you look over at your friends and they're playing Club Penguin, Pop Tropica, or like that website, Primary Games, with that jumping thing through space. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, video games are pretty awesome. Why do we even play video games? One could say that they are a brief relief from the existential terrors of life. It makes you happy, unless you're bad at the game, which in that case, you probably just get angrier. But what makes video games so awesome is that you could do things that you probably wouldn't be able to do in real life. You want to shoot somebody? Boom, you could play Call of Duty. You want to just chill out, roam the environment, build a house? Boom, you got Minecraft. You want a family for your house? Boom, you got The Sims. If you ever want to go to space, boom, I'm sure there's a game for that. Are you underage and want to go to a strip club? Boom, you could play GTA. If you just want to get shit on by underage players, boom, you got Fortnite. But you want to know the interesting thing about all those games? None of them compare to our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. No, I'm just kidding. Let's get right into it. So today we're going to be doing the video game Iceberg. It's got like 10 tiers. It's a pretty big one. I think this video is going to be like really long. So if I sound tired by the end of it, I'm sorry. But I literally record everything in like one sitting. It's 11:30 p.m. right now. I'll let you guys know what time it is by the end. I'm just gonna step in and take a second to explain myself here real quick. First of all, don't listen to me. This video was not recorded in one day. After one day of recording, I realized that I would not be able to record it in one day. It took a span of over like 5 days or something like that. You're gonna have to excuse me because I'm gonna sound kind of different in different segments of this video. A lot has happened, guys. I got that internship I was interviewing for and also turned 21. It's not really much, but yeah, again, my bad, guys. Due to my schedule, I can only record during the nighttime, so excuse me if I sound kind of tired in some parts of the video. But other than that, hope you guys enjoy. Alright, so we're starting off with a level 1, and our first game we have is Fortnite. Now, Fortnite is an online video game developed by Epic Games and it was released in 2017. It's available in 3 distinct game mode versions that otherwise share the same general gameplay and game engine. You got Fortnite Save the World, which is a cooperative hybrid tower defense shooter survival game for up to 4 players that fight off zombie-like creatures and defend objects with traps and fortifications that they can build. You got Fortnite Battle Royale, which is a free-to-play battle royale game in which up to 100 players fight to be the last standing. And then you got your, like, I don't know, I guess you could just call it the creative mode version of Fortnite. Angry Birds. And Angry Birds is actually a Finnish action-based media franchise created by the Finnish company Rovio Entertainment. And the series focuses on multicolored birds that try to save their eggs from green-colored pigs, which are the bad guys. And it was inspired by the game Crush the Castle, and the game has been praised for its successful combination of fun gameplay, comical style, and low price. I think it's like 99 cents. Yeah. Roblox. Roblox is an online game platform and creation system developed by Roblox Corporation. It allows its users to program games and play games created by other users. Founded by David Baszucki and Eric Castle in 2004 and released in 2006, the platform hosts user-created games of multiple genres coded in the programming language Lua. Among Us. Among Us is an online multiplayer social deduction game developed and published by an American game studio called Inner Sloth. It was released on iOS and Android devices in June 2018 and on Windows in November 2018, featuring cross-platform play between these platforms. The game was inspired by the party game Mafia and the science fiction horror film The Thing. The game takes place in a space-themed setting in which players take on one of 2 roles, most being crewmates and a predetermined number of imposters. The goal of the crewmates are to identify the imposters, eliminate them, and complete tasks around the map. And the imposters' goal are to covertly sabotage and kill the crewmates before they complete all their tasks. While the game was initially released in 2018 with little mainstream attention, it received a massive influx of popularity in 2020 due to many well-known Twitch streamers and YouTubers playing it. The Sims. The Sims is a series of life simulation video games developed by Maxis and published by Electronic Arts, and the franchise has sold nearly 200 million copies worldwide, and it is one of the best-selling video game series of all time. The games in The Sims are largely sandbox games in that they lack any defined goals, and the player creates virtual people called Sims, places them in houses, and helps them direct their moods and satisfy their desires. Players can either place their Sims in pre-constructed homes or build them themselves. And yeah, Minecraft. Minecraft is a sandbox video game developed by Mojang. The game was created by Marcus Notch Persson in the Java programming language. It was released as a paid public alpha for personal computers in 2009 before releasing in November 2011, with James Bergenston taking over development. Minecraft has since been ported to several other platforms and is the best-selling video game of all time, with 200 million copies sold and 126 million monthly active users as of 2020. In Minecraft, players explore a blocky procedural 3D generated world with infinite terrain and discover and extract raw materials, craft tools and items, and build structures or earthworks. I mean, you guys get the gist. I think it'd be hard to actually find someone out there who doesn't know what Minecraft is, but yeah, it's a cool game. Slender. Slender, the 8 Pages, formerly called Slender, is a free-to-play indie-developed first-person survival horror game released in 2012 as a beta for Microsoft Windows and OS X by Parsec Productions using the Unity engine. Developed by Mark J. Hadley, the game is based on the quasi-folklore meme figure known as the Slender Man, who is depicted as a tall humanoid creature wearing a black suit and tie with a white face and no facial features. The character is known for the ominous, although fictitious, abduction of countless children in dark, mysterious settings such as deep forests and abandoned buildings. Now, this game is set in the forest in the middle of the night and played in like a first-person perspective, and the player's objective is to collect all 8 notes located in various areas of the forest while avoiding Slenderman. As you collect pages, the fog in the forest grows thicker and the Slenderman appears closer to the characters, and the character's sprinting speed also slowly increases as well. A game over occurs when either the player has taken too long to find a note, the player stares at Slenderman for too long, or Slenderman comes into contact with the player, which will all result in a game over, and the game over screen shows Slenderman's face close up and blinking static pulses. Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog. So Super Mario is a platform game series created by Nintendo featuring their mascot Mario. Alternatively called the Super Mario Bros. Or simply the Mario series, it is a central series of the greater Mario franchise, and at least one of the Super Mario games has been released for every major Nintendo video game console. There have also been a number of Super Mario video games released on non-Nintendo gaming platforms, and there are currently 21 similar games and one cross-series game that may or may not be included as part of the series. And Sonic the Hedgehog is a Japanese video game series and media franchise created and owned by Sega. And the franchise follows Sonic, an anthropomorphic blue hedgehog who battles the evil Dr. Eggman, a mad scientist. The main Sonic the Hedgehog games are platformers mostly developed by the Sonic team, and some of their games include spin-offs in racing, fighting, party, and sports genres. And the franchise also incorporates printed media, animations, and a 2020 feature film and merchandise. Pokemon. Pokemon is a series of video games developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company under the Pokemon Media franchise. Created by Satoshi Tajiri with assistance from Ken Sugimori. The first games, Pocket Monsters Red and Green, released in 1996 in Japan for the Game Boy, and the main series of role-playing games, referred to as a core series by the developers, have continued on each generation of Nintendo's handhelds. One of the most recently released core series games, Pokemon Sword and Shield, released worldwide on the Nintendo Switch on November 15th, 2019. The upcoming core series games, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, will be released in late 2021, and Pokemon Legends Arceus in early 2022, both for the Nintendo Switch. They are remakes and a pre-make of the 2006 Nintendo DS games Pokemon Diamond and Pearl respectively. Now, Pokemon is the world's largest media franchise with successful anime, you could call it anime series, I guess. A lot of people have arguments on whether it's anime or cartoon or whatever. Movies and merchandise, with spin-off game Pokemon Go having crossed 1 billion mobile game downloads worldwide. By November 24th, 2017, more than 300 million Pokemon games have been sold worldwide on handheld and home consoles across 76 titles, including spin-offs. As of March 2020, the series had sold over 368 million units worldwide. This makes Pokemon the third best-selling video game franchise behind Nintendo's own Mario franchise and Tetris. Farmville. Farmville was an agricultural simulation social network game developed and published by Zynga in 2009. It is similar to Happy Farm and Farmtown, and the gameplay involves various aspects of farmland management such as plowing land, planting, growing, and harvesting crops, including harvesting trees and raising livestock. Farmville 2, the sequel, was released in September 2012. After launching on Facebook in 2009, Farmville became the most popular game on the site and had held that position for over 2 years. At its peak in March 2010, the game had 83.76 million monthly active users, and daily active users peaked at 34.5 million. After 2011, the game began experiencing a considerable decline in popularity, and by May 2012, the game was ranked as the 7th most popular Facebook game. As of April 30th, 2016, its rank had fallen to the 110th most popular Facebook game as measured by daily active users, while Farmville 2 had climbed to 42. Tycoon Games. Now, Tycoon Games are just really a business simulation game, and the main premise of a tycoon game is the player tries to increase their own total worth by the effective management of a business to become the first tycoon. Cooking Mama. Cooking Mama is a Japanese video game series and media franchise owned by Cooking Mama Limited. The series is a cookery simulation style minigame compilation of many video games and adventures for Nintendo gaming platforms. Generally, the gameplay revolves around performing different kitchen tasks through the instructions of Mama to cook various meals. The series so far consists of 5 main games on Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS, and 2 spin-offs on Wii, 2 spin-offs on DS, and a spin-off on 3DS. It also spins off into the Gardening Mama series. The original Cooking Mama game was also ported to iOS, and a 6th main series game, Cooking Mama Cookstar, was briefly released on the Nintendo Switch eShop on March 31st, 2020, but was taken down hours later due to legal issues. And on March 26, 2021, the game was released on the PlayStation Store. Just Dance. Just Dance is a rhythm game series developed and published by Ubisoft. The series title was named after the Lady Gaga song of the same name. And the original Just Dance game was released on the Wii in 2009 in North America, Europe, and Australia. It's a motion-based dancing game for multiple players, with each game including a collection of classic and modern songs with its own dance choreographies. During each song, players mirror a dance performed by actors on the screen, following commands that appear on the screen, and are awarded for their accuracy. Additionally, there are gold moves which players must strike a pose in order to earn bonus points, and players are given ranks based on how well they do. Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing New Horizons is a 2020 life simulation game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch. It is the 5th main game in the Animal Crossing series. In New Horizons, the player controls a character who moves to a deserted island after purchasing a getaway package from Tom Nook, playing the game in a non-linear fashion and developing the island as they choose. They can gather and craft items, customize the island, and form it into a community of anthropomorphic animals. Now, New Horizons was a major commercial success, selling 31 million copies worldwide and breaking the console game record for most digital units sold in a single month. It is the best-selling game in the Animal Crossing series and the 2nd best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch, the 2nd best-selling game of all time in Japan, and the 16th best-selling game in history. Its success has been attributed in part to its release amid a global stay-at-home orders during the COVID-19 pandemic. Smash Bros. Super Smash Bros. Is a Japanese series of crossover fighting video games published by Nintendo and primarily features characters from various Nintendo franchises. The series was created by Masahiro Sakurai, who has directed every game in the series. Gameplay objective differs from that of traditional fighters in that the aim is to increase damage counters and knock opponents off the stage instead of depleting life bars. The original Super Smash Bros. Was released in 1999 for the Nintendo 64, and the third installment, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, was released in 2008 for the Wii. The series features many characters from Nintendo's most popular franchises, including Super Mario, Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Star Fox, Kirby, Yoshi, and Pokemon. And the original Super Smash Bros. Only had 12 playable characters, with the roster count rising for each successive game, and later including third-party characters, with Ultimate containing every character playable in the previous games. Every game in the series has been well received by critics, spawning a large competitive community that has been featured in several gaming tournaments. Flash website games. Now, I guess this would include, like Pop Tropica, Club Penguin. I can't really, those are like the top 2 most popular website games that I even know. I'm pretty sure that I got a good amount of Flash games. Some of them you might recognize. I remember playing this Zack and Cody game where you'd have to like take down posters and avoid Ashley Tisdale and Mr. Mosby and all that shit. Oh man. Mobile games. A mobile game is a video game that is typically played on a mobile phone. Historically, the term refers to all games that are playable on a portable device, a mobile phone, tablet, handheld game console, portable media player, or graphing calculator. The earliest known game on a mobile phone was a Tetris variant on the Haginook MT2000. Baby puzzle games. Pretty simple one here. This one is just, puzzle games for babies. Yeah. Next up, we're moving on to level 2, which is called Normie. First off, we have any sports games, and I'm just gonna, I'm sorry for anyone who's not EA, but most sports games are made by EA. You got San Diego Studio, and you also got Ubisoft, but EA Sports is a division of Electronic Arts that develops and publishes sports video games, formerly a marketing gimmick of Electronic Arts in which they tried to imitate real-life sports networks by calling themselves the EA Sports Networks, with pictures or endorsements with real commentators such as John Madden. It soon grew up to be a sub-label on its own, releasing a game series such as FIFA, NHL, NBA Live, and Madden NFL. You also have MLB The Show with San Diego Studios, and I guess you could count Skate as a sports game too, maybe. Yeah, you can count Skate as a sports game. It's gonna be in the damn Olympics. And you got Ubisoft with Steep. Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is an open-world action adventure stealth video game franchise published by Ubisoft and developed mainly by its studio Ubisoft Montreal, using the game engine Anvil and its more advanced derivatives. The series' first title was released in 2007, and it has featured 12 main games in total, with the most recent being 2020's Valhalla. Main games of Assassin's Creed are set in an open world and presented from the third-person perspective, where the protagonists take down targets using their combat and stealth skills with the exploitation of their environment. Players have freedom to explore the historical settings as they finish main and side quests, and apart from single-player missions, some games also provide competitive and cooperative multiplayer gameplay. The video game series has received multiple awards and nominations, including Game of the Year awards, and it is commercially successful, selling over 155 million copies as of October 2020 and becoming Ubisoft's best-selling franchise and one of the highest-selling video game franchises of all time. While main games are produced for major consoles and desktop platforms, multiple spin-off games are released for consoles, mobiles, and handheld platforms. Assassin's Creed was also adapted into a film, which received a lot of negative reviews, and a series of art books, encyclopedias, comics, novelizations, and novels have been published. Plane simulators. A flight simulator is the device that artificially recreates aircraft flight and the environment in which it flies for pilot training, design, or other purposes such as entertainment. It includes replicating the equations that govern how aircraft fly, how they react in applications of flight controls, the effects of other aircraft systems, and how the aircraft reacts to external factors such as air density, turbulence, wind shear, cloud, precipitation, etc. Flight simulation is used for a variety of reasons, including flight training, mainly of pilots, and the design and development of the aircraft itself. Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. Red Dead Redemption is a video game series developed and published by Rockstar Games consisting of 3 standalone games, 1 expansion pack, and associated downloadable content. The series is influenced by both westerns and the realities of the 19th and early 20th century American West. Due to the time period in which the games are set, the horse, stagecoach, and train are the primary methods of transportation. Red Dead Redemption 1 provides the player with an open world setting and more options for side missions and random exploration, and Red Dead Redemption 2 often builds on the mechanics introduced in the predecessor and introduces a greater level of interaction with the game, map, and NPCs, while Red Dead Online is considered by Rockstar as the series' first ever dedicated multiplayer title. Call of Duty. Call of Duty is a first-person shooter video game franchise published by Activision. Starting out in 2003, it focused on games set in World War II. Over time, the series has seen games set in the midst of the Cold War, futuristic worlds, and outer space. The games were first developed by Infinity Ward, then also by Treyarch and Sledgehammer Games, and several spin-offs and handheld games were made by other developers. The most recent title, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, was released in November 13th, 2020. As of May 2019, the series has sold over 300 million copies, with new games in the series released annually to blockbuster level sales. The series is verified by the Guinness Book of World Records as the best-selling first-person shooter game series. It is the most successful video game franchise created in the United States and the 6th highest grossing video game franchise of all time. Other products in the franchise include a line of action figures designed by Plan B Toys, a card game created by Upper Deck Company, Mega Bloks set by Mega Brands, and a comic book miniseries published by Wildstorm Productions. Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is a series of action-adventure games created by David Jones and Mike Daly. It is primarily developed by a British development house, Rockstar North, and published by its parent company, Rockstar Games. The name of the series references the term Grand Theft Auto used in the United States for motor vehicle theft. Now, gameplay focuses on an open world where the player can complete missions to progress an overall story, as well as engage in various side activities. Most of the gameplay revolves around driving and shooting, with occasional role-playing and stealth elements. The series has elements of earlier beat-em-up games from the 16-bit era, and the games in the Grand Theft Auto series are set in the fictional locales modeled after real-life cities at various points in time from the early 1960s to the 2010s. The series has been critically acclaimed and commercially successful, having shipped more than 280 million units with an estimated gross revenue of over $9 billion, making it the 4th highest selling video game franchise of all time behind Nintendo's Mario and Pokemon franchises and Tetris. In 2006, Grand Theft Auto was featured in a list of British design icons by the Great British Design Quest, organized by the BBC and Design Museum. And in 2013, The Telegraph ranked Grand Theft Auto among Britain's most successful exports, behind smallpox and Christianity. The series has also been controversial for its adult nature and violent themes. Alright guys, you know how I said it was like 11:30 when I started recording? I'm fucking tired, y'all. I'll be back. I'll start back recording tomorrow. So if I sound different in literally 1 second, I'm sorry. Alright guys, we're back. I forgot to mention, 90% of you are not subscribed. Blah, 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 blah. Please hit the subscribe button. Blah, blah. It's free, and I appreciate it. Also, we just hit 2,000 subscribers, so thank y'all, for real. It means a lot to me. One day I'll tell y'all my life story, but till then, next up we got Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's an American media franchise created by Scott Cawthon, and the success of the video games led to the publication of several books, including a novel trilogy, guidebook, activity book, and anthology series. The main series consists of 9 games. In the first 3 games, the player controls a nighttime security guard who must utilize security cameras and other tools to survive against animatronic characters, which become mobile and homicidal after hours. The 4th game takes place in a house of a child who must defend against nightmarish versions of the animatronics. And the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th game all have their own little twists on them. The series actually appeared in the Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition, setting a record for the largest numbers of sequels released in a year. Death Stranding. Death Stranding is an action game developed by Kojima Productions. It is the first game from the director Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions after the split from Konami in 2015. The game is set in the United States following a cataclysmic event which caused destructive creatures to begin roaming the earth, and players control Sam Porter Bridges, and he is a courier tasked with delivering supplies to isolated colonies and reconnecting them via wireless communications networks. Death Stranding received generally favorable reviews, with critics praising its voice acting, soundtrack, visuals, with more mixed opinions regarding its gameplay and story. The game was nominated for and won several awards, including Game of the Year. Numerous commentators noted that the elements of the game resembled the COVID-19 pandemic, which began within a month of its release. Last of Us. The Last of Us is an action-adventure game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Players control Joel, a smuggler tasked with escorting a teenage girl, Ellie, across a post-apocalyptic United States. Players use firearms and improvised weapons and can use stealth to defend against hostile humans and cannibalistic creatures infected by a mutated fungus in the genus Cordyceps. I think I said that wrong. Development of The Last of Us began in 2009, and soon after the release of Naughty Dog's previous game, Uncharted 2. For the first time in the company's history, Naughty Dog split into two teams. One developed Uncharted 3, while the other half developed The Last of Us. It was released for the PlayStation 3 in June 2013, and a remastered version was released for the PlayStation 4 in July 2014. It was praised for its narrative, gameplay, visuals, sound design, characterization, and depiction of the female characters. The Last of Us became one of the best-selling video games, selling over 1.3 million units in its first week and 17 million by April 2018. The game won year-end accolades, including multiple Game of the Year awards from several gaming publications, critics, and game award ceremonies. It has been cited as one of the greatest video games ever made. A television adaptation is currently in development by HBO, written by Druckmann and Craig Mazin, and stars Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Life is Strange. Life is Strange is an episodic graphic adventure developed by Don't Nod Entertainment and published by Square Enix's European subsidiary for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Linux, iOS, and Android. The plot focuses on Max Caulfield, an 18-year-old photography student who discovers that she has the ability to rewind time at any moment, leading her every choice to enact the butterfly effect, and the player's actions will adjust the narrative as it unfolds and reshape it once allowed to travel back in time. During its release, Life is Strange received generally favorable reviews, commending the character development, rewind game mechanic, and tackling of taboo subjects. Common criticisms included the slang that was used, poor lip syncing, and tonal inconsistencies of the story. The game received over 75 Game of the Year awards and listings, and it has sold over 3 million copies as of May 2017. Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 is a multiplayer first-person shooter game developed and published by Valve. It is a sequel to the 1996 Team Fortress mod for Quake and its 1999 remake, Team Fortress Classic. It was released in October 2007 as part of the Orange Box video game bundle for Windows and Xbox 360. Now, the gameplay is basically players join one of two teams and choose one of 9 character classes to battle in modes such as Capture the Flag and King of the Hill. Team Fortress 2 received acclaim for its art direction, gameplay, humor, and use of character in an only multiplayer game. Valve continues to release new content on a seasonal basis in the form of submissions made through the Steam Workshop. Though the game had an unofficial competitive scene for many years, both support for official competitive play through ranked matchmaking and an overhauled casual experience were added in July 2016. Terraria. Terraria is an action-adventure sandbox game developed by Relogic. The game was first released for Microsoft Windows on May 16, 2011, and has since been ported to several other platforms. The game features exploration, crafting, building, painting, and combat with a variety of creatures in a procedurally generated 2D world. Terraria received generally positive reviews, with praise given to its sandbox elements. The game had sold over 35 million copies by the end of 2020, and it's noted for its classic exploration adventure style of gameplay similar to games such as Metroid series and Minecraft. Gears of War. Gears of War, also known as simply just Gears, is a media franchise centered on a series of video games created by Epic Games and developed and managed by the Coalition and owned by Xbox Game Studios. The franchise is best known for its third-person shooter video games, which has been supplemented by spin-off video game titles, a comic book series, 7 novels, and a board game adaptation, and various merchandise. The original trilogy focuses on the conflict between humanity and the subterranean reptilian hominids known as the Locust Horde on the world of Sarah. The first installment, titled Gears of War, was released in November 7th, 2006 for the Xbox 360, and the game follows a protagonist, Marcus Phoenix, a soldier for the coalition of ordered governments tasked with the last-ditch effort to destroy the Locust Horde and save humanity. Gears of War became one of the best-selling franchises for the Xbox 360. The series is well known for its emphasis on cover-based combat, in which players can use objects to avoid gunfire or safely engage enemies. And the Gears of War games have been amongst the most popular and most played titles on Xbox Live. God of War. God of War is an action-adventure game franchise created by David Jaffe at Sony's Santa Monica studio. It began in 2005 on the PlayStation 2 video game console and has become a flagship title for the PlayStation brand, consisting of 8 games across multiple platforms, with a 9th currently in development. Based in ancient mythology, the story follows Kratos, a Spartan warrior who was tricked into killing his family by his former master, the Greek god of war Ares. This sets off a series of events that leads to war with mythological pantheons. The Greek mythology era of the series sees Kratos follows a path of vengeance due to the machinations of the Olympian gods, while the Norse mythology era, which introduces his son Atreus as a secondary protagonist, shows an older Kratos a path of redemption, which inadvertently brings the two into conflict with the Norse gods. Games in this series have been praised as being some of the best action games of all time, and the series has received numerous awards, including several Game of the Year recognitions for the 2005 and 2018 installments. Some of the games have also been remastered for the newer PlayStation platforms, and as of November 2020, the franchise has sold over 51 million games worldwide. Strong sales and support of the series led to the franchise's expansion into other media, such as 3 comic book series and 3 novels. A film adaptation of the original installment has been in development since 2005, and merchandise includes artwork, clothing, toys, prop replicas, as well as the game's soundtracks, including heavy metal album Blood and Metal, released in 2010. Portal 1 and 2. Portal is a series of first-person puzzle platform video games developed by Valve. Set in the Half-Life universe, the 2 games in the series, Portal and Portal 2, center on one woman, Shell, forced to undergo a series of tests within the Aperture Science Enrichment Center by a malicious artificial intelligence, GLaDOS, that controls the facility. Most of the tests involve using the Aperture Science handheld portal device, or the portal gun, that creates 2 human-sized wormhole-like connections between 2 flat surfaces. The Portal game series are noted for bringing students and their projects from the DigiPen Institute of Technology into Valve and extending their ideas into the full games. Both games have received near universal praise and have sold millions of copies. The first game was released as part of a 5-game compilation, The Orange Box, though intended as a short bonus feature of the compilation, was instead considered the highlight of the 5. Its success led to the creation of the much longer Portal 2, which included both single-player and cooperative player modes. It too received near universal critical acclaim, and a number of spin-off media have been developed alongside the games, and several of the game elements have become part of internet memes. Doom. Doom is a video game series and media franchise created by John Carmack, John Romero, Adrian Carmack, Kevin Cloud, and Tom Hall. The series focuses on the exploits of an unnamed space marine operating under the auspices of the Union Aerospace Corporation, who fights hordes of demons and the undead. Doom is considered one of the pioneering first-person shooter games, introducing IBM-compatible computers features such as 3D graphics, third-dimension spatiality, networked multiplayer gameplay, and support for player-created modifications with the Doom WAD format. Since its debut in 1993, over 10 million copies of games in the Doom series have been sold, and the series has spawned numerous sequels, novels, comic books, board games, and film adaptations. Halo. Halo is an American military science fiction media franchise managed and developed by 343 Industries and published by Xbox Game Studios. The franchise and its early main installments were originally developed by Bungie. The original trilogy centers on interstellar war between humanity and an alliance of aliens known as the Covenant. The Covenant, led by their religious leaders called the Prophets, worship an ancient civilization known as the Forerunners, who perish while defeating the parasitic flood. The games in this series are critically acclaimed, with the original considered the Xbox's killer app. This led to the term Halo Killer being used to describe console games that aspire or are considered to be better than Halo. Fueled by the success of Halo Combat Evolved and by marketing campaigns from the publisher Microsoft, its sequels went on to record-breaking sales. By 2015, the games have sold over 65 million copies worldwide, with the games alone grossing almost $3.4 billion. As of February 2021, that figure has risen to 81 million copies. Halo has since become one of the highest grossing media franchises of all time. These strong sales led to the franchise's expansion to other media. The Halo universe now spans multiple best-selling novels, graphic novels, comic books, short movies, animated movies, and feature films, as well as other licensed product. A sixth main installment, Halo Infinite, is due for release in fall 2021. Just Cause. Just Cause is an action-adventure game series created by Avalanche Studios, which was formerly owned by Eidos Interactive and after 2009 by Square Enix Europe. The series consists of Just Cause 2, Just Cause 3, and Just Cause 4. The games are open world and primarily take place in islands and archipelagos. Each game in the series tests a player by giving them tools such as a parachute, grappling hook, and wingsuit to overthrow a governing body in the game setting. By 2018, the series had shipped over 15 million copies worldwide. The series directly draws its name from the real-life United States invasion of Panama, codenamed Operation Just Cause. The player plays as Rico Rodriguez, a secret agent who originally hails from the fictional nation of Medici. Players can also take control of vehicles found in the world, as well as performing stunts on them. Additionally, players can utilize Rico's grappling hook, parachute, and wingsuit to travel around the map. Skyrim. The Elder Scrolls V, or Skyrim, is an open-world action role-playing game developed by Bethesda Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It is the fifth installment in the Elder Scrolls series and was released worldwide for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360 in November 11th, 2011. The game's main story... Wait. 11? Oh, that's fucking cool. Holy shit. Alright. My bad. The game's main story revolves around the player's character, the Dragonborn, on their quest to defeat Alduin, the World Eater, a dragon who was prophesied to destroy the world. The game is set in 200 years after the events of Oblivion and takes place in Skyrim, the northernmost province of Tamriel. Over the course of the game, the player completes quests and develops the character by improving skills. The game continues the open world tradition of its predecessors by allowing the player to travel anywhere in the game world at any time and to ignore or postpone the main storyline indefinitely. The game was released to critical acclaim, with reviewers particularly mentioning the character advancement and the setting, and is considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Nonetheless, it has received some criticism, predominantly for its melee combat and numerous technical issues present at the launch. The game shipped over 7 million copies to retailers within the first week of its release and over 30 million copies on all platforms as of November 2016, making it one of the best-selling video games in history. Far Cry. Far Cry is a franchise of first-person shooter games, all of which have been published by Ubisoft. The first game, Far Cry, was developed by Crytek to premiere their CryEngine software and released in March 2004. Subsequently, Ubisoft obtained rights to the franchise, and the bulk of the development is handled by Ubisoft Montreal with assistance from other Ubisoft satellite studios. The Far Cry games, due to the history of their development, do not have any significant shared elements, but instead share a theme of placing the player in a wilderness environment where they must help fight against one or more factions that control the region, as well as surviving against wild animals that roam the open spaces. The Far Cry games feature a robust single-player campaign with later opening titles offering a cooperative campaign support. The games also offer competitive multiplayer options and the ability for users to edit the game's maps for these matches. The Far Cry games have generally been well received and are considered a commercial success. Ubisoft reports through 2014 the lifetime sales of the Far Cry franchise has exceeded 20 million units. Bioshock. Bioshock is a 2007 first-person shooter game developed by 2K Boston and 2K Australia and published by 2K Games. It is the first game in the Bioshock series, and the game's concept was developed by Irrational's creative lead, Kevin Levine, and incorporates ideas by 20th century dystopian and utopian thinkers such as Ayn Rand, George Orwell, and Aldous Huxley, as well as historical figures such as John D. Rockefeller and Walt Disney. Bioshock is set in 1960, and the player guides the protagonist Jack after his airplane crashes in the ocean near the bathysphere terminus that leads to the underwater city of Rapture. Built by the business magnate Andrew Ryan, the city was intended to be an isolated utopia, but the discovery of Adam, a genetic material which can be used to grant superhuman powers, initiated the city's turbulent decline. Bioshock includes elements of role-playing games, giving the player different approaches in engaging enemies, such as by stealth, as well as moral choices of killing or saving characters. Bioshock received critical acclaim and was particularly praised by critics for its morality-based storyline, environments, and its unique settings. It is considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time and a demonstration of video games as an art form. Mass Effect. Mass Effect is a science fiction media franchise created by Preston Wadamanuik, Drew Karpyshyn, and Casey Hudson, and owned by Electronic Arts. The first entry in the series is a third-person role-playing shooter video game developed by BioWare and was initially released for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Microsoft Windows. A fourth game was released on Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One in March 2017. The original trilogy largely revolves around a space Navy soldier named Commander Shepard, whose mission is to save the galaxy from a race of powerful mechanical beings known as the Reapers and their agents. The original trilogy was met with commercial success as well as universal acclaim, and the series is highly regarded for its narrative, character development, voice acting, the universe, and emphasis on player choice affecting the experience. Rainbow Six Siege. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege is an online tactical shooter video game developed by Ubisoft Montreal and published by Ubisoft. It was released worldwide for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on December 1st, 2015. The game was also released for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X exactly 5 years later on December 1st, 2020. The game puts heavy emphasis on environmental destruction and cooperation between players. Each player assumes control of an attacker or a defender in different gameplay modes, such as rescuing a hostage, defusing a bomb, and taking control of an objective within a room. The title has no campaign but features a series of short offline missions called situations that can be played solo. Announced at Electronic Entertainment Expo 2014, it received 4 nominations from Game Critics Awards, including Best of Show. The game received an overall positive reception from critics, with praise mostly directed to the game's tense multiplayer and focus on tactics. However, the game was criticized for its progression system and its lack of content. Initial sales were weak, but the game's player base significantly increased as Ubisoft subsequently released several packages of free downloadable content. Several years after the game's release, some critics regarded Siege as one of the best multiplayer games in the modern market due to the improvements brought by the post-launch updates. The company partnered with ESL to make Siege an esports game, and in December 2020, the game surpassed 7 million registered players across all platforms. Amnesia. Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a survival horror adventure game by Frictional Games, released in 2010 for Microsoft Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems in 2016, and in 2016 for PlayStation 4, and in 2018 for the Xbox One. The game features a protagonist named Daniel exploring a dark and foreboding castle while trying to maintain his sanity by avoiding monsters and other terrifying obstructions. The game was critically well received, earning 2 awards from the Independent Games Festival and numerous positive reviews. Dishonored. Dishonored is a 2012 action-adventure game developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. Set in the fictional plague-ridden industrial city of Dunwall, Dishonored follows the story of Corvo Attano, bodyguard to the Empress of the Isles. He is framed for her murder and forced to become an assassin, seeking revenge on those who conspired against him. Corvo is aided in his quest by the Loyalists, a resistance group fighting to reclaim Dunwall, and the Outsider, who is a powerful being who imbues Corvo with magical abilities. The game is played from a first-person perspective and allows the player to undertake a series of missions in a variety of ways, with emphasis on player choice. Missions can be completed through stealth, combat, or a combination of both, and exploring each level opens new paths and alternatives for accomplishing mission goals. Dishonored received positive reviews, focusing on the mission's individual narratives and the freedom available in completing them. Criticism fell on the overarching narrative, which was considered predictable, and problems in controlling the player's character. The game won several awards, including the 2012 Spike Video Game Award for Best Action Adventure Game and the 2013 BAFTA Award for Best Game, and was repeatedly recognized as the Best Action Adventure Game of 2012 and one of the year's best games. Two narrative sequels, Dishonored 2 and Dishonored Death of the Outsider, were released in 2016 and 2017, respectively. VR games. VR gaming is the term used to describe a new generation of computer games with virtual reality or VR technology that gives players a truly immersive first-person perspective of game action. Participants both experience and influence the game environment through a variety of VR gaming devices and accessories, including VR headsets, sensor-equipped gloves, hands, controllers, and more. Virtual reality games can be played on standalone systems, specialized game consoles, or using advanced laptops and PCs that can power the leading VR headsets such as Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and Lenovo Mirage Solo. MOBAs, or Multiplayer Online Battle Arenas. MOBA is a subgenre of strategy video games in which two teams of players compete against each other on a predefined battlefield. Each player controls a single character with a set of unique abilities that improve over the course of the game and which contribute to the team's overall strategy. The ultimate objective is for each team to destroy their opponent's main structure located on the opposite corner of the battlefield. However, MOBA games can have other victory conditions, such as defeating every player on the enemy team. Players are assisted by computer-controlled units that periodically spawn in groups and march forward along paths towards their enemy's base, which is heavily guarded by defensive structures. This type of multiplayer online video games originated as a subgenre of real-time strategy. Moreover, there are examples of MOBA games that are not considered real-time strategy games, such as Smite and Paragon. The genre is seen as a fusion of real-time strategy, role-playing, and action games. Undertale. Undertale is a 2D role-playing game created by the indie developer Toby Fox. The player controls a child who has fallen into the underground, a large secluded region under the surface of the earth separated by a magic barrier. The player meets various monsters during the journey back to the surface. Some monsters might even engage the player in a fight. The combat system involves the player navigating through many bullet hell attacks by the opponent, and they can opt to pacify or subdue monsters in order to spare them instead of killing them. These choices affect the game, with the dialogue, characters, and story changing based on outcomes. The game was released for Microsoft Windows and OS X in September 2015, and it was also ported to Linux in July 2016, PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita in August 2017, the Nintendo Switch in September 2018, and the Xbox One and Xbox Series S in March 2021. The game was acclaimed for its thematic material, intuitive combat system, musical score, originality, story, dialogue, and characters. And the game sold over 1 million copies and was nominated for multiple accolades and awards. Several gaming publications and conventions listed Undertale as Game of the Year. Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is a video game series developed and published by Square Enix, formerly Square. The first title in the series, Final Fantasy, premiered in Japan in 1987, and the Final Fantasy games have been released almost every single year since. 15 games have been released as part of the main series. Sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and related video games have also been published, as well as numerous titles in other media forms. Each game in the main series takes place in a different fictional universe rather than serve as direct sequels to prior games, although some titles have received sequels or prequels or are set in the same universe. Most of the games have been re-released for several different platforms, many of which have been included in bundle releases, and the series as a whole is primarily composed of role-playing video games, but also includes massively multiplayer online role-playing games, or MMORPGs, third-person shooters, tower defense games, and tactical role-playing games. Final Fantasy games have been released on over a dozen video game consoles, beginning with the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, as well as for personal computers and mobile phones. The series is Square Enix's most successful franchise, having sold over 100 million units worldwide as of June 2011, across both the main series and its spin-offs. Final Fantasy's popularity has placed it as one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time. Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Fallout 4 is an action role-playing game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It is the fourth main game in the Fallout series and was released worldwide on November 10th, 2015 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. The game is set within the open-world, post-apocalyptic environment that encompasses the city of Boston and the surrounding Massachusetts region, known as the Commonwealth. It makes use of a number of landmarks, including Bunker Hill, Fort Independence, and Old North Bridge near Concord as a bridge out of Sanctuary Hills. The main story takes place in the year 2287, 10 years after the events of Fallout 3 and 210 years after the Great War, which caused a catastrophic nuclear devastation across the United States. And the player assumes control over a character called the Sole Survivor, who emerges from a long-term cryogenic stasis in Vault 111. After witnessing the murder of his spouse and the kidnapping of his son, the character ventures out into the Commonwealth in search of their missing child. I don't really want to spoil it, actually, so if you haven't played Fallout 4, you probably should play it. It's got a really, really good story. Yeah, if you had played it, you know how it goes. It's pretty badass. But Fallout 4 received positive reviews from critics, with many praising the world depth, player freedom, and overall amount of content, crafting, and soundtrack, while criticism was mainly directed at the game's visual and technical issues. The game was a commercial and critical success, generating $750 million within the first 24 hours of its launch, and received numerous accolades from various gaming publications and award events, including the respective awards for Game of the Year and Best Game at the Academy of Interactive Arts and Scientists and British Academy Games Awards. Bethesda has since released 6 downloadable content add-ons, including the expansions Far Harbor and Nuka World. Fallout 76. Fallout 76 is an online role-playing game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. Released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on November 14th, 2018, it is an installment in the Fallout series and a prequel to the previous entries. Fallout 76 is Bethesda Game Studios' first multiplayer game, which gives players the option to explore the open world that has been torn apart by a nuclear war with others. Fallout 76 was released to generally mixed reviews, with criticism for the game's numerous technical issues, overall design, lack of gameplay purpose, and initial absence of human or NPCs. The game was subject to several controversies, chiefly with regard to the quality of physical content. A number of Bethesda's responses and attempts to provide ongoing support related to Fallout 76 in the months following its launch were also met with criticism. The game sold 1.4 million copies by the end of 2018, and Wastelanders, an update that reintroduces non-playable characters in the series, was launched in April 2020. Xcom 2. Xcom 2 is a 2016 turn-based tactics video game developed by Firaxis Games, and published by 2K Games. It is a sequel to the 2012's reboot of the series, Xcom Enemy Unknown, and it takes place 20 years after the events of Enemy Unknown. Xcom, a military organization trying to fight off an alien invasion, has lost the war and is now a resistance group against the occupation of Earth and the established totalitarian regime and military dictatorship. Gameplay is split between turn-based combat, in which players command a squad of soldiers to fight enemies, and strategy elements in which players manage and control the operations of the Avenger, an alien ship that is used as a mobile base for XCOM. XCOM 2 was released in February 2016 for personal computers and released in September 2016 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Upon release, the game received critical acclaim, and critics placed a new concealment system, which they said adds a new layer of depth and the procedural generation of maps. The game was also praised for its difficulty and the addition of modding tools, and criticism was mainly directed at its poor performance at launch. It was nominated for multiple year-end accolades by several publications. Bloodlines. Bloodlines is a 2004 action role-playing game developed by Troika Games and published by Activision for Microsoft Studios. Set in White Wolf Publishing's World of Darkness, the game follows a human who was killed and revived as a fledgling vampire. The game depicts the fledgling's journey through the 21st century Los Angeles to uncover the truth behind a recently discovered relic that heralds the end of all vampires. Bloodlines is presented from a first-person and third-person perspective, and the player assigns their character to one of the several vampire clans, each with unique powers, and customizes their combat and dialogue abilities, and progresses through the bloodlines using violent and non-violent methods. The selection of the clan affects how the player is perceived in the game world and which powers and abilities they possess. This opens up different avenues of exploration and methods of interacting with or manipulating other characters. The player is able to complete side missions away from the primary storyline by moving freely between the available hubs: Santa Monica, Hollywood, downtown Los Angeles, and Chinatown. Released in competition with Half-Life 2 and several other titles, Bloodlines sold fewer than 80,000 copies during its initial release, which was considered a poor performance. It divided critics at the time, although they praised the game's writing and scale of choice. They criticized its technical flaws. It was Troika Games' last production before its failure in early 2005, when it was unable to secure additional projects. The game has a cult following as a rarely replicated example of gameplay, and narrative and contemporary reception recognize it as a flawed masterpiece. Since its original release, Bloodline received post-release support from fans, supplying unofficial fixes and re-adding unused content. A sequel, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, is in development. Hitman 2. Hitman 2 Silent Assassin is a 2002 stealth video game developed by IO Interactive and published by Eidos Entertainment for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 2, and Xbox and GameCube. The game was re-released for Windows through the Steam online distribution service, and a DRM-free version was made later through GOG.com. It is the second installment in the Hitman video game series and the sequel to Hitman Codename 47. The single-player story once again follows Agent 47, a genetically enhanced human clone who worked for the International Contract Agency as an assassin. Following the events of Codename 47, the former contract killer has retired and started a peaceful life at church, but after his only friend, Reverend Emilio Vittorio, is kidnapped by unknown assailants, 47 resumes its work for the ICA in hopes of tracking him down. The gameplay focuses on eliminating targets while trying to remain undetected for as long as possible. The game introduces the option for a first-person view and the ability to incapacitate enemies instead of killing them. Hitman 2 received generally positive reviews from critics, who considered it to be an improvement over its predecessor in every aspect. The game was also a commercial success, having sold more than 3.7 million copies as of April 23, 2009, which makes it the best-selling Hitman game in the original series, prior to 2016's Hitman. CSGO. CSGO, or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, is a multiplayer first-person shooter developed by Valve and Hidden Path Entertainment, and is the fourth game in the Counter-Strike series. Developed for over 2 years, Global Offensive was released for Windows, Mac OS, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3 in August 2012 and Linux in 2014. Valve still regularly updates the game, both with smaller balancing patches and larger content additions. The game pits two teams, terrorists and counter-terrorists, against each other in different objective-based game modes. The most common game mode involves the terrorists planting a bomb while the counter-terrorists attempt to stop them, or counter-terrorists attempting to rescue hostages that the terrorists have captured. There are 8 official game modes, all of which have distinct characteristics specific to that game mode, and the game also has matchmaking support that allows players to play on dedicated Valve servers in addition to community-hosted servers with custom maps and game modes. A Battle Royale game mode, Danger Zone, was introduced in December 2018. Global Offensive received positive reviews from critics on release, who praised the game for its gameplay and faithfulness to the Counter-Strike series, though it was criticized for some early features and the differences between the console and PC versions. Since its release, it has drawn in an estimated 11 million players per month and remains one of the most played games on Valve's Steam platform. In December 2018, Valve transitioned the game to a free-to-play model, focusing on revenue from cosmetic items. The game has an active esports scene, continuing the history of international competitive play from previous games in the series, and teams compete in professional leagues and tournaments, and Global Offensive is now one of the largest global esports. Rust. Rust is a multiplayer-only survival game developed by Facepunch Studios. Rust was released for early access in December 2013 and received its full release in February 2018. It is available on Microsoft Windows and Mac OS. Console versions for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have been soon to release in May 2021. I guess it's already out. Is it out already for console? Rust was initially created as a clone of DayZ, a popular mod for Arma 2, with crafting elements akin to those in Minecraft. The objective of Rust is to survive in the wilderness using gathered or stolen materials, and players must successfully manage their hunger, thirst, and health, or risk dying. Despite the presence of hostile animals such as bears and wolves, the primary threat to the player is other players, due to the game being solely multiplayer. Combat is accomplished through firearms and various weapons such as bows, in addition to vehicles controlled by non-player characters that will occasionally roam, attacking armed players. Rust features crafting, though initially limited to the discovery of specific items in the game's open world, and to stay protected, players must build bases or join clans to improve their chance of survival. Raiding as a clan is a major aspect of Rust, and Rust supports modded servers, which can also add additional content. Throughout Rust's alpha release, critical reviews were mixed, with many comparisons made to other survival games. Rust was commonly explained as being a mixture of DayZ and Minecraft. During this period, reviewers frequently noted the game's unfinished nature. During its pre-release phase, critics praised the concept and gameplay, and by March 2017, Rust had sold over 5 million copies. After leaving early access, it received mixed reviews from critics. The player versus player combat and survival aspects were highlighted by those who enjoyed the game, though reviewers were critical of the constant need to grind for materials, along with the harsh beginner experience. Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk, also known as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, is a skateboarding video game series published by Activision and endorsed by the American professional skateboarder of the same name. The series was primarily developed for home consoles by Neversoft from launch to 2007 until Activision transferred the franchise to Robomodo in 2008, who developed the franchise until 2015 when Activision and Hawk's license expired, leaving the future of the series uncertain. Neversoft's first 5 Tony Hawks received critical acclaim for their unique gameplay, varied soundtracks, and expansion over their predecessors. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and Pro Skater 3 are critically ranked among the best games released for the PlayStation and PlayStation 2, respectively. SimCity. SimCity is an open-ended city-building video game series originally designed by Will Wright. The first game in the series, SimCity, was published by Maxis in 1989. The success of SimCity sparked the creation of several sequels and many other spin-off Sim titles, including 2000's The Sims, which itself became the best-selling computer game and franchise. In the SimCity games, the player develops a city from a patch of undeveloped land, and the player controls where to place development zones, infrastructure like roads and power plants, landmarks, and public services such as schools, parks, hospitals, and fire stations. The player also determines the tax rate, budget, and social policy. The city is populated by Sims, simulated persons who live in the city created by the player. While there is no particular win condition in the game of SimCity, the balancing act of dimension factors provides the constraints which make the gameplay possible. To maximize population or profitability, to recreate real-life locations in-game, achieve an aesthetic design, or to trigger as many natural disasters as possible are among many of the possible goals one can determine for oneself while playing a SimCity game. Fighting games. A fighting game is a video game genre based around close combat between a limited number of characters in a stage in which the boundaries are fixed. The characters fight each other until they defeat their opponents or the time expires. The match typically consists of several rounds in an arena, with each player having different abilities, but each is relatively viable to choose. Players must master techniques such as blocking, counterattacking, and chaining attacks into combos. Starting in the early 1990s, most fighting games allowed the player to execute special attacks by performing specific input combinations. The fighting game genre is related to, but not distinct from, beat-em-ups, which involve large numbers of enemies against the human players. This period spawned dozens of other popular fighting games, including franchises like Street Fighter, Super Smash Bros., Dead or Alive, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and Virtua Fighter. Cuphead. Cuphead is a 2017 run-and-gun video game developed and published by Studio MDHR. The game was inspired by the rubber horse style of animation used in cartoons from the golden age of American animation, such as the work of Walt Disney Animation Studios and Fleischer Studios, and sought to emulate their subversive and surrealistic qualities. Cuphead features one or two players taking control of his titular protagonist and his brother Mugman to fight through several levels that culminate into boss fights in order to repay their debt to the devil. The game was praised for its art style, gameplay, soundtrack, and difficulty. It was both a critical and commercial success, winning several awards and selling over 6 million copies within 3 years. And an animated series based on the game is in production by Netflix. Medieval. Medieval is an action-adventure hack-and-slash video game developed by the SCE Cambridge studio and published in Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation. The game is set in the medieval kingdom of Gallowmere and centers around the charlatan protagonist, Sir Daniel Fortesque, as he makes an attempt to stop the antagonist, Zarok's invasion of the kingdom, while simultaneously redeeming himself. The visuals are heavily influenced by Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. It was originally conceived as an arcade-style shooter for platforms such as Windows and the Sega Saturn, and the game received mostly positive praise from critics upon its release, with praise including its blend of Hollywood-themed visuals, but it was criticized for its controls and lack of proper camera work. A PlayStation 4 remake was also released in 2019 to enhance the graphics and experience of gameplay. Earthworm Gym. Earthworm Gym is a series of side-scrolling platform games featuring an earthworm named Jim who wears a robotic suit and battles the forces of evil. The series is noted for its platforming and shooting gameplay, surreal humor, and edgy art style. 4 games were released in the series: Earthworm Gym 2, Earthworm Gym 3D, wow, and Earthworm Gym Menace to the Galaxy, with the first game released in 1994. The series has laid dormant for almost a decade before Gameloft remade the original game in HD for PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade in 2010, and Interplay announced Earthworm Gym 4 in 2008, but little has surfaced since. Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program is a space flight simulation video game developed and published by Squad for Microsoft Studios macOS, Linux, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. In the game, players direct a space program staffed and crewed by green humanoid aliens known as Kerbals. The game features a realistic orbital physics engine, allowing for various real-life orbital maneuvers, such as the home and transfer orbits and orbital rendezvous. People and agencies in the space industry have taken interest in the game, including NASA, the European Space Agency, and Peter Beck, CEO and CTO of Rocket Lab. 2 expansions have been released for the game as downloadable content called Making History in March 2018 and Breaking Ground in March 2019. A sequel, Kerbal Space Program 2, has been announced for a 2020 release. Commander Keen. Commander Keen is a series of side-scrolling platform video games developed primarily by ID Software. The series consists of 6 main episodes, a lost episode, and a final game. All but the final game were originally released for MS-DOS in 1990 and 1991, while the 2001 Commander Keen was released for the Game Boy Color. The series follows the Commander Keen, which is the secret identity of the 18-year-old genius Billy Blaze as he defends the Earth and the galaxy from alien threats with his homemade spaceship, ray guns, and pogo stick. Alright, next up we're moving on to Tier 3, and first off we have Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear is a series of action-adventure stealth video games created by Hideo Kojima and developed and published by Konami. The first game, Metal Gear, was released in 1987 for MSX home computers. The player often takes control of a special forces operative, usually Solid Snake or Big Boss, who is assigned the task of finding the titular superweapon, Metal Gear, a bipedal walking tank with the ability to launch nuclear weapons. As of December 2020, over 56.9 million copies of games in the franchise have been sold worldwide, with individual installments critically and commercially acclaimed and receiving several awards. Oblivion. The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion is an open-world role-playing video game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks and the Take-Two Interactive Division 2K Games. It is the 4th installment in the Elder Scrolls action fantasy series following the 2002's The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, and was released for Microsoft Windows and Xbox 360 in March 2006 and PlayStation 3 in March 2007. Taking place within the fictional province of Cyrodiil, Oblivion's main story revolves around the player character's efforts to thwart a fanatical cult known as the Mythic Dawn that plans to open a portal to a demonic realm known as Oblivion. The game continues the open world tradition of its predecessors by allowing the player to travel anywhere in the game world at any time and to ignore or postpone the main storyline indefinitely. Upon release, Oblivion was well received by critics and has won a number of industry and publication awards. It was praised for its impressive graphics, expansive game world, and schedule-driven NPCs, and is now considered one of the greatest games ever made. Half-Life 1 and 2. Half-Life is a first-person shooter video game developed by Valve and published by Sierra Studios for Microsoft Windows in 1998. It was Valve's debut product and the first game in the Half-Life series. Players assume the role of Gordon Freeman, a scientist who must escape the Black Mesa research facility after it's invaded by aliens, and the core gameplay consists of fighting aliens and fighting human enemies with a variety of weapons and solving puzzles. It won over 50 PC Game of the Year awards and was considered one of the most influential FPS games as well as one of the best video games ever made. By 2008, it has sold over 9 million copies, and it was followed by the expansion packs Opposing Force in 1999 and Blue Shift in 2001, developed by Gearbox Software. Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a 2011 action role-playing game developed by From Software and published by Namco Bandai Games. Dark Souls takes place in the fictional kingdom of Lordran, where players assume the role of a cursed undead character who begins a pilgrimage to discover the fate of their kind. Dark Souls has been cited as one of the best video games of all time, and you know what? I played it a little bit. I'd cite it as one of the fucking hardest video games of all time. Critics praise the depth of its combat, intricate level design, and use of flavor text. However, the game's difficulty received more mixed reviews, with some criticizing it for being too unforgiving. By 2013, the game had sold over 2 million copies worldwide, and 2 sequels were released in the mid-2010s, while a remastered version was released in 2018. Demon's Souls Remake. Demon's Souls is an action role-playing game developed by Bluepoint Games with assistance from Japan's studio and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. It is a remake of Demon's Souls, originally developed by From Software and released for PlayStation 3 in 2009. The game was also released as a launch title for the PlayStation 5 in November 2020. Using the original art assets, music, and level design as a blueprint, the game wanted to fine-tune the experience so it would appeal to players accustomed to modern games. Bloodthorn. Bloodthorn is an action role-playing game developed by From Software and published by Sony Computer Entertainment, which released for the PlayStation 4 in March 2015. Bloodthorn follows the player's character, a hunter, through the decrepit Gothic Victorian era-inspired city of Yarnum, whose inhabitants are afflicted with a blood-borne disease. Attempting to find the source of the plague, the player's character unravels the city's mysteries while fighting beasts and cosmic beings. The game is played from a third-person perspective, and players control a customizable protagonist, and the gameplay is focused on strategic weapons-based combat and exploration. Bloodborne received critical acclaim, with praise being directed at its gameplay, particularly high in its difficulty, sound design, and Lovecraftian themes, and interconnected world design. Some criticism was directed at its technical performance at launch, which was improved with its post-release updates. By the end of 2015, the game had sold over 2 million copies worldwide, and Bloodborne was nominated for and won several awards, and has been cited as one of the greatest video games of all time. Sekiro. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is an action-adventure game developed by From Software and published by Activision. The game follows the shinobi known as Wolf as he attempts to take revenge on a samurai clan who attacked him and kidnapped his lord. Gameplay is focused on stealth, exploration, and combat, with a particular emphasis on boss battles. The game takes place in a fictionalized Japan set during the Sengoku period and makes strong references to the Buddhist mythology and philosophy. The game was praised by critics, complimenting its gameplay and setting, and compared it to the Souls games, although opinions on its difficulty were mixed. It was nominated for various awards and won several, including the Game of the Year. The game sold over 5 million copies by July 2020, and a free update adding new features to the game, such as a boss rush game mode, was released in October 2020. Binding of Isaac. The Binding of Isaac is an indie roguelike video game designed by Edmund McMillan and Florian Himsel. Initially released in 2011 for Microsoft Windows, the game was later ported for OS X and Linux operating systems. The game's title and plot are inspired by the biblical story of the Binding of Isaac. In the game, Isaac's mother receives a message from God demanding the life of her son as proof of her faith, Isaac. And Isaac, fearing for his life, flees into the monster-filled basement of their home where he must fight to survive. The game gained popularity partially as a result from Let's Play videos showcasing the title, and McMillan and Himsel released an expansion, The Wrath of the Lamb, in May 2012. The Binding of Isaac has been well received, with critics praising the game's roguelike nature to encourage repeated playthroughs. By 2014, McMillan reported over 3 million copies had been sold. The game has also been said to contribute to renewed interest in the roguelike genre from both players and developers. Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is a 2017 action-adventure game developed and published by Team Cherry and was released for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, and Linux in 2017. The game follows a nameless knight as they traverse through an ancient, plague-infested kingdom inhabited by various insects known as the Hollow Nest. The knight must travel through the hollowness, fighting bosses and unlocking new abilities to progress as they uncover the mysteries of the kingdom. Hollow Knight was well received by critics and has sold over 3 million copies as of December 2020. A sequel is also in development called Hollow Knight Silksong. Persona 5. Persona 5 is a role-playing game developed by Atlus. It is the 6th installment of the Persona series, which is part of the Megami Tensei franchise. It was released for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in Japan in September 2016 and worldwide April 2017. Persona 5 takes place in a modern-day Tokyo and follows a high school student known by the pseudonym of Joker, who transfers to a new school after being falsely accused of assault and put on probation. The party battles enemies known as the Shadows using physical manifestations of their psyche known as their personas. The game also incorporates role-playing and dungeon crawling elements alongside social simulation scenarios. Persona 5 was met with critical acclaim, with praise given to its visual presentation, art direction, gameplay, story, and music. The game is considered to be one of the greatest role-playing games of all time and won several awards. The game has sold over 4.6 million copies, making it the best-selling entry in the Megami Tensei franchise. Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus, released in Japan as Wander of the Colossus, is an action-adventure game developed by Japan Studio and Team ICO and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2. The game was released in North America and Japan in 2005 of October and PAL regions in February 2006. The game's storyline focuses on a young man named Wander who enters a forbidden land, and Wander must simply travel across a vast expanse of the land on horseback and defeat 16 massive beings known simply as Colossi in order to restore the life of a girl named Mono. Cited as an influential title in the video game industry and one of the best video games ever made, Shadow of the Colossus is often regarded as an important example of video game as art due to its minimalist landscape designs, immersive gameplay, and emotional journey. It received wide critical acclaim by the media and was met with strong sales due to ICO. The game won several awards for its audio design and overall quality, and Shadow of the Colossus is also referenced numerous times in debates regarding the art quality and emotional perspectives of video games. Nier Automata. Nier Automata is a 2017 action role-playing game developed by Platinum Games and published by Square Enix. Set during a proxy war between alien-created machines and human-crafted androids, the story follows the trials of a combat android, a companion, and fugitive prototype. The story requires multiple playthroughs, each unlocking additional story elements. Gameplay combines role-playing elements with action-based hack-and-slash combat, and features switches between video game genres, similar to that of Nier, with elements ranging from shoot-'em-up to text adventure. The game was praised for its story and themes, gameplay, and music. Criticism was leveled at some visual and technical problems, and the PC release saw a mixed response due to technical issues that were not officially addressed. Initial sales surpassed its publisher's expectations, and as of February 2021, the game has sold over 5.5 million copies worldwide. Hotline Miami. Hotline Miami is a top-down shooter video game by Jonathan Soderstrom and Dennis Whedon, collectively known as Tycoon Games. Set in 1989 Miami, the game revolves primarily around an unnamed silent protagonist, dubbed Jacket by fans, who has been receiving coded messages on his answering machine, instructing him to commit massacres against the local Russian mafia. The game blends top-down perspective with stealth, extreme violence, and surreal storytelling, along with the soundtrack and visuals inspired by 1980s culture. At release, the game received critical acclaim with praise regarding its narrative, themes, music, and gameplay. Hotline Miami has since become a cult video game, and a sequel, Hotline Miami 2, was released on March 10th, 2015. Anime VR. There's not much to say about this one. It's just, anime and virtual reality. Yeah, man, yeah. Go check it out, man. Anime, virtual reality. Really nice. Really nice anime, virtual reality anime, yeah. Indie games. Indie games is, an independent video game or indie game is a video game typically created by individuals or smaller development teams without the financial and technical support of a large game publisher. However, the term indie game may apply to other scenarios where the development of the game has some measure of independence from a publisher, even if a publisher helps fund and distribute a game such as creative freedom. Because of their independence and freedom to develop, indie games focus often on innovation, experimental gameplay, and may explore the medium to produce unique experiences in art games. Indie games tend to be sold through digital distribution channels rather than at retail due to lack of publisher support. Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Fallout 3 is a 2008 post-apocalyptic action role-playing open-world video game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. The third major installment in the Fallout series, it is the first game to be created by Bethesda since it bought the franchise from Interplay Entertainment. The game marks a major shift in the series by using 3D graphics and real-time combat and turn-based combat of previous installments. The game is set inside a post-apocalyptic open-world environment that encompasses a skilled region consisting of the ruins of Washington, D.C., and much of the countryside to the north and west of it, referred to as the Capital Wasteland. It takes place in the Fallout's usual setting of a world that has been deviated into an alternate timeline thanks to atomic age technology, which eventually led to its devastation by nuclear apocalypse in the year 2077, referred to as the Great War. Fallout 3 was met with critical acclaim and received a number of Game of the Year awards, praising the game's open-ended gameplay, and is considered one of the greatest video games of all time. The MPD group estimated Fallout 3 sold over 610,000 units during its initial month of release in October 2008, performing better than Bethesda's previous game, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which sold nearly 500,000 units during its first month. Fallout New Vegas is a post-apocalyptic action role-playing game developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Bethesda Softworks. It was announced on April 2009 and released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360 in October 19, 2010. A spin-off of the Fallout series, the game is set in a post-apocalyptic open-world environment that encompasses a region consisting of Arizona, California, and Nevada. Players take control known as the Courier while transporting a package across the Mojave Desert and the city of New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas received positive reviews, with critics praising the game's writing, crest, and improved gameplay, though it was criticized for its glitches and bugs upon launch. It was a commercial success, shipping more than 5 million copies, and is estimated to have sold around 12 million copies worldwide. The game received a Golden Joystick Award for the RPG Year of the Year in 2011 and was nominated for the BAFTA Awards Best Strategy Game and Best Story, as well as the Navigator Award for supporting performance and drama from Felicia Day. It has since obtained a cult following, with some critics and audiences referring to the game as being among the best in the Fallout series and one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Earthbound. Earthbound is a role-playing game developed by Ape Inc. and HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The second entry in the Mother series, it was released in Japan in August 1994 and in North America in June 1995. As Ness and his party of four, Paula, Jeff, and Pooh, the player travels the world to collect melodies from the 8 sanctuaries in order to defeat the universal cosmic destroyer, Gyagax. The game has sold about 440,000 copies worldwide, with approximately 300,000 sold in Japan and about 140,000 in the United States. Initial reviewers had little praise for Earthbound in the United States, where it sold half as many copies as Japan, and journalists attributed this to a combination of its simple graphics, satirical marketing campaign, and lack of market interest in the game. However, in its ensuing years, a dedicated fan community spawned, which advocated for the series' recognition. Starting with the first installment in 1999, Nis has appeared as a playable character for each entry of the Smash Bros. Series, which helped popularize Earthbound itself. By the 2000s, the game had become regarded as a sacred cow amongst gaming's cognoscenti, with multiple reader polls and critics naming it as one of the greatest video games of all time. Faster Than Light. Faster Than Light is a space-based, top-down, real-time strategy roguelike game created by indie developer Subset Games, which was released for Microsoft Studios, macOS, and Linux in September 2012. In the game, the player controls a crew of a single spacecraft holding critical information to be delivered to an allied fleet while being pursued by a large rebel fleet. The player must guide the spacecraft over 8 sectors, with each planetary systems and events procedurally generated in a roguelike fashion, while facing rebel and other hostile forces, recruiting new crew, and outfitting and upgrading their ship. The concept for FTL was based on tabletop games and other non-strategic space combat video games that required the player to manage an array of ship's functions. The game received generally positive reviews from critics, who praised the game's creativity. FTL is recognized alongside games like Splunky and The Binding of Isaac that use some but not all the principles of a classical roguelike. Resident Evil. Resident Evil, known in Japan as Biohazard, is a Japanese horror video game series and media franchise created by Capcom. The franchise follows people trying to survive outbreaks of zombies and other monsters created mainly by a pharmaceutical company, Umbrella Corporation. The game consists of survival horror, third-person shooter, and first-person shooter games, and the franchise has expanded into a live-action film series, animated films, television, comic books, novels, audio dramas, and other media and franchise. It was credited for defining the survival genre and returning zombies to popular culture. Resident Evil is Capcom's best-selling video game franchise, with over 105 million units sold worldwide as of September 2020, making Resident Evil the highest-grossing franchise in the horror and zombie genres. The franchise has been influential in popular culture, inspiring popular media in the video game, film, and television industries. Fear. Fear is a series of first-person shooter survival horror video games developed by Monolith Productions. There are 3 main games: Fear 1, Fear 2, Project Origin, and Fear 3. The series is known for its horror gameplay and its main antagonist, Alma Wade. The player is the Point Man, a silent protagonist and a member of Fear, and in the second game, the game's playable character is Michael Beckett, a member of the Delta Force. Each game has a different objective but same main plot: find and neutralize Alma Wade before she tears apart the fabric of reality in her unforgiving rage. Payday. Payday The Heist is a cooperative video game developed by Overkill Software and published by Daybreak Game Community. It was released on October 18, 2011 for the PlayStation 3 in North America, November 2nd in Europe. It contains 7 different missions, including the free No Mercy downloadable content, with each mission containing random elements which alter the gameplay in subtle ways with the aim of enhancing replayability. And the game focuses on 4 robbers, Dallas, Hoxton, Shanes, and Wolf, who team up, robbing drug junkies in an abandoned apartment complex and ambushing a prisoner transport in heavy rain weather, simply for the enjoyment of the players. Other Metroidvanias. Metroidvania is a subgenre of action-adventure video games, and the term is used as a description for the game series Metroid and Castlevania. Metroidvania games use game design and mechanics that are similar to the games of these 2 series. Specifically, the genre's basis derives from the Castlevania title and many of the games in the franchise that come after it, which are generally considered to certain aspects of gameplay comparable to that of the Metroid series of the games. Metroidvania games also typically are side-scrolling platformers, but can also include other genre types. Though popularized on consoles in the 1990s, the genre saw a resurgence in the 2000s due to a number of critically praised independent developed games. Other roguelikes. Roguelike is a subgenre of role-playing games characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the player character. Most roguelikes are based on a high fantasy narrative reflecting their influence from tabletop role-playing games such as Dungeons and Dragons. The exact definition of a roguelike game remains a point of debate in the video game community, and with more powerful home computers and gaming systems and the rapid growth of indie video game development, several roguelikes have appeared, with some often incorporating other gameplay genres, thematic elements, and graphical styles, with common examples including Splunky, The Binding of Isaac, Slay the Spire, and Hades. To distinguish these from traditional roguelikes, such games may be referred to as roguelite, or roguelike-like, or procedural death labyrinths. Fury. Fury is a fast-paced game combining the elements of twin-stick shooters, bullet hell, and third-person action games. The player is challenged in one-on-one arena boss fights, getting progressively harder along the way. Fury has been inspired by Japanese games such as No More Heroes, Metal Gear Solid, and God Hand, and is a result of desire to capture the combined movement of fright, passion, and adrenaline you feel in a fight. Fury is a skill-based game, and the diversity of opponents and attack patterns is there to make the player refine their skills and get better and better along the way, instead of increasing the character's stats or his weapons. Ultimately, feeling your skills improve as a player is what quote-unquote feels best in a video game. Alright, next up we got level 4, also known as the Weirdo, I think? Yeah, Weirdo. And first off we have Rhythm. Rhythm game or rhythm action is a genre of music-themed action video games that challenges a player's sense of rhythm, and games in the genre typically focus on dance or the simulated performance of musical instruments and require players to press buttons in a sequence dictated on the screen. Many rhythm games include multiplayer modes in which players compete for the highest score or cooperate as a simulated musical ensemble. Some rhythm games would include Dance Dance Revolution, Guitar Freaks, Guitar Hero, Rock Band 3, Rocksmith, you know 'em, man. You play 'em. Rock on, bro. Rock on. Demon's Souls Original. Demon's Souls is an action role-playing game developed by From Software for the PlayStation 3 under the supervision of Japan's studio. It is the first installment in the Souls series, and it is set in Boletaria, a kingdom consumed by a dark being called the Old One. Gameplay has players navigating 5 different worlds from a hub called the Nexus, with a heavy emphasis on challenging combat and mechanics surrounding player death and respawning. Online multiplayer allows both player cooperation and world invasions, featuring player versus player combat. Announced in 2008, early reactions to Demon's Souls demo were seen as negative, and the game's high difficulty prompted Sony to pass on publishing the title outside of Japan. While the game met with average reception and sales in Japan, it became a commercial and critical success in the West, and was praised for its difficult combat and addictive gameplay, and subsequently won several awards. Its success began a series of the Souls games, starting with Dark Souls in 2011, and a remake by Bluepoint Games and Japan Studio was released as a launch title for the PlayStation 5 in November 2020. Visual novels. A visual novel, often abbreviated as VN, is an interactive fiction video game genre featuring text-based story with narrative style of literature and interactivity aided by static or sprite-based visuals, most often using anime-style art or occasionally live-action stills, and sometimes even video footage. Visual novels originated and are especially prevalent in Japan, where they made up nearly 70% of the PC game titles released in 2006. Visual novels are rarely produced for video game consoles, but the more popular games have occasionally been ported to systems such as the Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, PlayStation Portable, or Xbox 360. The more famous visual novels are often adapted into light novels, manga, or anime, and the market for visual novels outside of East Asia is small, though a number of anime based on visual novels are popular among anime fans in the Western world, and examples include Clannad, Steins Gate, and Fate/Stay Night. Nier 1. Nier is an action role-playing game developed by Cavia and published by Square Enix for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in April 2010. In Japan, the game was released as Nier Replicant for the PlayStation 3 with the younger main character, while an alternate version titled Nier Gestalt with an older main character was released for the Xbox 360. Gestalt was released outside of Japan as Nier for both platforms, and an updated version of Replicant titled Nier Replicant was released worldwide for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows in April 2021. Nier was released to mixed reception, while reviewers praised the story, characters, and soundtrack, and were mixed with opinions on how well gameplay elements were connected. The execution of some gameplay elements were criticized, notably the side quests and the graphics were regarded as substandard. Despite this, the game acquired a cult following, and a sequel with the gameplay handled by Platinum Games titled Nier Automata was released in 2017. Shmups. Shoot 'em ups, also known as shmups or STGs, is a subgenre of video games within the shooter subgenre of the action genre. There is no consensus as to which design elements compose a shoot 'em up, and some people restrict the definition to games featuring spacecraft and certain types of character movement, while others allow a broader definition including characters on foot and a variety of perspectives. The genre's roots can be traced back to Space War, one of the earliest computer games developed in 1962, Space Invaders, Asteroids, Galaxian, and those type of games. Shoot 'em ups were most popular during the 1980s and 1990s, and a subgenre of shoot 'em ups known as bullet hell games are video games that feature overwhelming numbers of enemy projectiles, often in visually impressive formations. OpenTTD. OpenTTD is a business simulation games in which players try to earn money by transporting passengers and freight via road, rail, water, and air. It is an open source remake and expansion of the 1994 Chris Sawyer video game Transport Tycoon Deluxe. In 2004, the development moved to their own server, and since 2018, the project uses GitHub for its source repository and bug tracker. Starting from April 1st, 2021, the game is now available on Steam. Second Life. Second Life is an online virtual world developed and owned by the San Francisco-based firm Linden Lab and launched in June 23rd, 2003. It saw rapid growth for some years and in 2013 had approximately 1 million regular users. Growth stabilized by the end of 2017 and the active user count had declined to between 800,000 and 900,000. The virtual world can be accessed freely via Linden Lab's own client software or alternative third-party viewers, and Second Life users, also called residents, create virtual representations of themselves called avatars and are able to interact with places, objects, and other avatars. They can explore the world, also known as the grid, meet other residents, socialize, participate in both individual and group activities, build, create, shop, and trade virtual property and services with one another. Farming and truck simulators. A farming simulator is a farming simulation video game series in which players are able to farm, breed livestock, grow crops, and sell assets created from farming. And there have been over 25 million copies sold of farming simulators, as well as over 90 million mobile downloads of farming simulators. Truck simulators are, just a truck simulated video game. It's like the same thing, but you're driving trucks. Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden is a series of action video games by Tecmo featuring the ninja Ryu Hayabusa as its protagonist. The series gained popularity on the 8-bit NES for its tight action platform gameplay, catchy music, and for being the first console game to have the story presented in cinematic cutscenes. A newer game titled Ninja Gaiden was released in 2004 as a 3D action game on the Xbox developed by Team Ninja, who are the makers of Dead and Alive, and the Ninja Gaiden franchise is known for its high degree of difficulty, particularly on the original NES and on the Xbox Revival. I'm pretty sure I downloaded Ninja Gaiden when I had an Xbox 360 and I played the demo. I don't think I got past the first level. I was just a kid though. I remember that. I remember it being pretty hard. Ico. Ico is an action-adventure game developed by a Japan studio and Team Ico and published by Sony Computer Entertainment and released for the PlayStation 2 video game console in 2001 and 2002. The protagonist is a young boy named Ico who was born with horns, which his village considers a bad omen, and warriors lock him away in an abandoned fortress. Born with horns. Isn't that the plot of one of these Netflix shows? Dude, I swear. I'm gonna find it after I'm done recording. And I'm going to put it on screen so you guys know what I'm talking about. Ico introduced several design and technical elements, including a story told with minimal dialogue, bloom lighting, and keyframe animation. Although not a commercial success, it was critically acclaimed for its art, original gameplay, and story elements, and received several awards, including Game of the Year nominations and 3 Game Developer Choice Awards. Considered a cult classic, it has been called one of the greatest video games of all time and is often brought up in discussions about video games as an art form. Deus Ex. Deus Ex is a 2000 action role-playing game developed by Ion Storm and published by Eidos Interactive. Set in a cyberpunk-themed dystopian world in the year 2052, the game follows J.C. Denton, an agent of the fictional agency United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition, who is given superhuman abilities by nanotechnology as he sets out to combat hostile forces in a world ravaged by inequality and a deadly plague. Deus Ex's gameplay combines elements of a first-person shooter with stealth elements, adventure, and role-playing genres, allowing for its tasks and missions to be completed in a variety of ways, which in turn lead to different outcomes. The game received critical acclaim, including being named Best PC Game of All Time in 2011 and receiving several Game of the Year awards, drawing praise for its pioneering designs and player choice and multiple narrative paths. Morrowind. The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind is an open-world action role-playing video game developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It is a third installment in the Elder Scrolls series, following 1996's Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, and was released in 2002 for Microsoft Windows and Xbox. The main story takes place in Vardenfell, an island in the Dunmer or Dark Elf province of Morrowind, part of the continent of Tamriel. Although primarily a fantasy game with many gameplay elements and Western medieval fantasy fiction tropes inspired by Dungeons and Dragons and previous RPGs, it also features some steampunk elements and drew much inspiration from the Middle Eastern and East Asian art, architecture, and cultures. Morrowind achieved both critical and commercial success, winning various game awards including Game of the Year and selling over 4 million copies worldwide by 2005. Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is a media franchise centered around a series of fantasy-themed action role-playing video games that started with the game Monster Hunter for PlayStation 2, released in 2004. Titles have been released across a variety of platforms, including personal computers, home consoles, portable consoles, and mobile devices. The series is developed and published by Capcom. The games are primarily action role-playing games, while the player takes the role of a hunter, slaying or trapping large monsters across various landscapes as part of quests given to them by locals, with some quests involving the gathering of a certain item or items, which may put the hunter at risk of facing various monsters. All main series titles feature multiplayer game modes, but can also be played as single player. As of March 31st, 2021, the game has sold 72 million units worldwide and is Capcom's second best-selling series, following Resident Evil. When Capcom released Monster Hunter World in 2018, it became the best-selling Monster Hunter video game within 3 days of its release and became Capcom's single best-selling video game of all time, with 17.2 million sales as of March 31st, 2021. In addition to games, the franchise has an anime based off the spin-off game Monster Hunter Diary Poka Aru Village, and a feature film directed by Paul Anderson that was released on December 3rd, 2020. Persona 4. Persona 4 is a role-playing video game developed and published by Atlus. It is chronologically the fifth installment in the Persona series and part of the larger Megami Tensei franchise. Persona 4 takes place in a fictional Japanese countryside and is indirectly related to earlier Persona games. The player-named protagonist is a high school student who moved to the countryside from the city for a year, and during the year-long stay, you become involved investigating mysterious murders while harnessing the power of summoning Persona. Persona 4 received critical acclaim with praise given to the gameplay, narrative, characters, and music, and was also regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time. Oh my god, I've said that so many times. Take a shot every time I say a video game. It's like, oh my god. An anime adaptation began airing in Japan in October 2011, and the game has also spawned 2 fighting game sequels, Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. The Witness. The Witness is a 2016 puzzle video game developed and published by Thekla Incorporated, inspired by Myst, and the game involves the exploration of an open-world island filled with natural and man-made structures. The player progresses by solving puzzles, which are based on interactions with grids presented on panels around the island or paths hidden within the environment. The game includes around 650 puzzles, though the player is not required to solve all of them to finish the game. The Witness received generally favorable reviews reviews from critics who praise the game's difficult but surmountable puzzles and the game's art and setting. And within a week of its release, the game has sold over 100,000 copies. Walking simulators. Now, I wasn't sure if this was directed towards like the derogatory slang term for a video game in which you just walk a lot, or like actual walking simulators. Are there walking simulator video games? There's like a simulator for everything, right? System Shock 2. System Shock 2 is a 1999 action role-playing survival horror video game designed by Ken Levine and co-developed by Irrational Games and Looking Glass Studios. The game takes place aboard a starship in a cyberpunk depiction of 2114, and the player assumes the role of a soldier trying to stem the outbreak of a genetic infection that has devastated the ship. The gameplay consists of first-person combat and exploration and incorporates role-playing elements in which the player can develop skills and traits such as hacking and psionic abilities. The game received critical acclaim but failed to meet commercial sales expectations. Many critics later determined that the game was highly influential in subsequent game design, particularly on first-person shooters, and it has been included in several greatest games of all time lists. Crusader Kings. Crusader Kings is a grand strategy game developed by Paradox Development Studio and published by Strategy First and Paradox Interactive in April 2004. The game is set primarily in Europe in the mid to late Middle Ages in the time period from December 26, 1066 until December 30th, 1452. Crusader Kings is a dynasty simulator with similarities to role-playing video games in that it focuses on a trait-based individual whose primary goal is the growth and enrichment of their dynasty. JRPG. Now, a JRPG is just defined as a franchise which is a role-playing game that was made in Japan or made in another country, but otherwise the franchise would be difficult to differentiate from a JRPG due to having common traits in JRPGs such as anime and manga character designs. Jet Set Radio. Jet Set Radio is a 2000 action game developed by Smilebit and published by Sega for the Dreamcast. The player controls a member of a youth gang, the GGs, as they use inline skates to traverse Tokyo, spraying graffiti and evading the authorities. The environments were based on Tokyo shopping districts in Shibuya and Shinjuku. It was the first game to use a cel-shaded art style, developed in response to the team's disappointment towards Sega games mainly resembling manga or anime. Jet Set Radio received acclaim for its graphics, soundtrack, and gameplay, and it won several awards and was nominated for many others. Cinematic platformers. Cinematic platformers are just a subgenre of platform games that attempt to combine traditional challenges of the genre with realistic structure and presentation. These games often feature more puzzle-solving elements and set pieces and play considerably slower than the jump and run-oriented titles. Team Fortress. Team Fortress Classic is a 1999 first-person shooter video game developed and released by Valve. The game pits two teams against one another in online multiplayer matches, and each member plays as one of the 9 classes, each with different skills. Since the release of Team Fortress Classic, the game has undergone significant upgrades to the player models and game models. Total War. Total War is a series of strategy games developed by British developer Creative Assembly for personal computers. They combine turn-based strategy and resource management with real-time tactical control of battles. Rather uniquely for real-time strategy video games, flanking maneuvers and formations factor heavily into gameplay. The first of the series, Shogun Total War, was released in June 2000. The most recent major game released was Total War Saga Troy on August 13th, 2020, and the series has sold over 20 million copies. Postal 2. Postal 2 is a 2003 first-person shooter developed by Running with Scissors and is a sequel to the 1997 game Postal and was released for Microsoft Windows in April 2003, macOS in 2004, and Linux in 2005. Set in the fictional town of Paradise, Postal 2 follows the life of the postal dude who must carry out mundane tasks throughout an in-game week, with the player deciding how violently or how passively he will react to various situations. The player navigates the open world to carry out his chores, with the player having choice on having an effect on the setting. The game received vastly mixed reception from critics upon release and has since received several expansion packs, and in December 2003 a multiplayer expansion was released titled Postal 2 share the pain. The game received attention for its violent gameplay and was responsible for multiple controversies, and the game was followed by the sequel, Postal 3, in December 2011. Kingsfield 2 through 4. Kingsfield is a role-playing video game series developed by From Software and is known for its brooding atmosphere and labyrinths. Titles in the series have been released for the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, Microsoft Windows, and various mobile phone platforms. The game's fully 3D first-person perspective was groundbreaking among role-playing video games of the time and received significant critical acclaim. The next Kingsfield titles followed quick in succession: Kingsfield 2 on July 1995 and Kingsfield 3 on June 1996. Kingsfield 4 was released several years later for the PlayStation 2 on October 4th, 2001. Alright, next up we got level 5, and it's called Outcast. Persona 3. Persona 3 is a 2006 role-playing video game developed by Atlus and is the fourth installment in the Persona series, which is part of the larger Megami Tensei franchise. It was originally released for PlayStation 2 in Japan July 2006, and the North American release of the game was delayed until 2007. In Persona 3, the player takes the role of a male high school student who joins the specialized extracurricular execution squad, which is a group of students investigating the Dark Hour, which is a time period between one day and the next that few people are aware of, and during the Dark Hour, the player enters Tartarus, a large tower containing shadows, creatures that feed on the mind of humans. To fight the shadows, each member of the squad could summon a persona, which is a manifestation of the person's inner self. The reception of Persona 3 was mainly positive, and critics enjoyed its social elements, while some found its combat and environments repetitive. Persona 3 has also seen related forms of media release, including a rhythm game spin-off, multiple soundtrack albums, musical concerts, radio dramas, a manga adaptation, an anime series, and an episodic animated film series. Xcom. Xcom is a science fiction video game franchise featuring an elite international organization tasked with countering alien invasions of Earth. The Xcom series has achieved a sizable cult following and has influenced many other games, including the creation of a number of clones, spiritual successors, and unofficial remakes. A reboot series was published by 2K Games, beginning with the strategy video game XCOM Enemy Unknown, developed by Firaxis Games and released in 2012 to critical and commercial success. It was followed by the prequel The Bureau XCOM Declassified and the sequel XCOM 2. Train simulators. They're train simulators, man. That's all I got for this one. Just Myst. Myst is a graphic adventure puzzle video game designed by the Miller Brothers and developed by Cayenne Inc. and published by Broderbund, and initially released for the Mac computer platform in 1993. In the game, players travel via special book to the island of Myst, and there, players solve puzzles, and by doing so, travel to 4 other worlds known as Ages, which reveal the backstory of the game's characters. Myst was a pretty big hit, and critics praised the ability of the game to immerse players in its fictional world. It sold more than 6 million copies and became the best-selling PC game until The Sims exceeded Myst sales in 2002. Since then, multiple remakes and ports of the game to other platforms have been released, as well as spin-off novels and other media. Quake. Quake is a first-person shooter video game developed by ID Software and published by GT Interactive in 1996. It is the first game in the Quake series, and in the game, players must find their way through various maze-like medieval environments while battling a variety of monsters using an array of weaponry. The overall atmosphere is dark and gritty with many stone textures and a rusty capitalized font. Quake also takes heavy inspiration from gothic fiction and the works of H.P. Lovecraft. The Necronomicon, dude. Blood. Blood is a first-person shooter video game developed by Monolith Productions and published by GT Interactive Software. The game follows the story of Caleb, an undead early 20th century gunfighter seeking revenge against the dark god Turnobog. That's a weird name. It features a number of occult and horror themes, and Blood includes large amounts of graphic violence, a large arsenal of weapons ranging from the standard to the bizarre, and numerous enemies and bosses. The Blood franchise was continued with 2 official expansion packs titled Plasma Pack and Cryptic Passage, and a sequel titled Blood 2: The Chosen was released on November 25th, 1998. H-Games. Indies. Now these are just hentai video games. Just any video game involving hentai. That's what it is. Dirty little EVE Online. EVE Online is a space-based, persistent world, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG, developed and published by CCP Games. Players of EVE Online can participate in a number of in-game professions and activities, including mining, piracy, manufacturing, trading, exploration, and combat, both versus other players and the environment. The game contains a total of 7,800 star systems that can be visited by players, and is renowned for its scale and complexity with regards to player interactions. In the single shared game world, players engage in unscripted economic competition, warfare, and political schemes with other players. There was an event called the Bloodbath of BR5RB, which was a battle involving thousands of players in a single star system that took 21 hours and was recognized as one of the most largest and expensive battles in gaming history. EVE Online was exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art with a video including the historical events and accomplishments of the player base. Fallout 1 and 2. Fallout is a turn-based role-playing video game developed and published by Interplay Productions in 1997. The game has a post-apocalyptic and chiefly retro-futuristic setting taking place in the mid-22nd century, decades after a global nuclear war, and the protagonist of Fallout is an inhabitant of a vault, part of a network of a long-term nuclear shelter, who is forced to venture out into the wastes to find a replacement part to fix their vault's failing water supply system and save their fellow vault dwellers. The original Fallout was critically acclaimed and a financial success. It was praised for its open-ended gameplay, combat, and the character system. The game reached 600,000 sales worldwide and is considered one of the best video games of all time. It won Role-Playing Game of the Year from both GameSpot and Computer Games Magazine, along with being nominated for an equivalent award by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences and Spotlight Awards. Thanks to the Fallout video game, it helped revive the role-playing game genre, which was getting unpopular at the time, and was subsequently followed by a number of sequels and spin-off games, collectively known as the Fallout series. Fallout 2 was developed by Black Isle Studios and published by Interplay Productions in October 1998. While featuring a considerably larger game world and far more extensive storyline, it mostly uses similar graphics and game mechanics to those of Fallout. The game's story takes place in 2241, 80 years after the events of Fallout and 164 years after the war. It tells a story of the original hero's descendant and their quest to save their primitive tribe from starvation by finding an ancient environmental restoration machine known as the Garden of Eden. The game was well received and praised for its gameplay, storyline, and was a worthy successor to the original Fallout, while the frequent bugs and lack of improvement over the first game attracted criticism. Project Zomboid. Project Zomboid is an open-world survival horror video game in alpha stage development by British and Canadian independent developer The Indie Stone. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic zombie-infested world where the player is challenged to survive for as long as possible before inevitably dying. The Indie Stone were subject to a high-profile setback within the indie gaming community following the theft of 2 laptops containing code for Project Zomboid. And since then, Project Zomboid has appeared on Steam Early Access and continues development to this day. Rainworld. Rainworld is a 2017 survival platform game developed by Video Cult over 6 years and published by Adult Swim Games for PlayStation 4 and Microsoft Windows in March 2017 and for Nintendo Switch in late 2018. Players assume control of the slug cat, an elongated creature, and are tasked with searching for the creature's relatives in a derelict and hostile world. The slug cat uses debris as weapons to escape from randomized enemies, forage for food, and reach safe hibernation rooms before a deadly torrential rain arrives. The player is given little explicit guidance on how to survive, which was the intention of the developers, who wanted the player to feel like a rat living on subway tracks, in which they learn to survive in an environment without grasping its higher level function. Rainworld received mixed reviews from critics who praised its art design and fluid animations, but criticized its brutal difficulty, inconsistent save points, and imprecise controls. Some of these criticisms were addressed with later updates, which also ended up adding a multiplayer mode for the game. Kingsfield 1. This is the first video game in the series of Kingsfield, which was only released in Japan. And in Kingsfield 1, the player takes the role of Gene Alfred Forrester, who is searching for his missing father, Hauser Forrester, who disappeared along with his soldiers while exploring a dead king's underground graveyard. Shorter than the others in the series, Kingsfield includes 5 floors, and the main aspects of gameplay consist of first-person battles, puzzle solving, and exploration. Thief 1 and 2. Thief is a stealth video game developed by Eidos Montreal and published by Square Enix's European subsidiary in February 2014. The game is set in The City, a dark fantasy world inspired by Victorian, Gothic, gaslight fantasy, and steampunk aesthetics. Players control Garrett, a master thief who embarks on several missions focusing on stealing from the rich. Players may approach levels in a variety of different ways, and also choose the action-oriented and lethal approach where players will disable or kill enemies on their way to their destination. They can use knives and takedowns or opt for a non-lethal stealthy approach, where players minimize interaction with NPCs and the environment in order to avoid detection. Upon release, the game received mixed critical reception, with critics praising its replay value and stealth gameplay, but also criticizing the map layout and story. Bad Rats. Bad Rats, or The Rat's Revenge, is a 2009 puzzle video game developed by Invent 4 Entertainment. Over a string of levels, the player places a set of rats on static objects to guide a ball towards a trap that kills a cat. Bad Rats was Invent's debut game on July 20th, 2009 via Steam, and followed releases on other services in 2010. While it received no reviews at release, retrospective pieces it criticized the game's graphics, puzzles, and physics. Bad Rats is considered an oddity for being released on Steam while the platform's catalog was still hand-curated. It became a popular gag gift on Steam, leading to more than 400,000 owners by 2018. A sequel, Bad Rats Show, was released on the 7th anniversary of Bad Rats in 2016. Stalker. Stalker, or Scavengers, Trespassers, Adventurers, Loners, Killers, Explorers, and Robbers, is a series of first-person shooter video games developed by Ukrainian video game developer GSC Game World for Microsoft Windows. The games are set in the area surrounding the Chernobyl disaster site, colloquially known as the Zone, in an alternate reality where a second explosion occurs at the Chernobyl nuclear plant 20 years after the first and causes strange changes in the area around it. The second disaster caused physical and meteorological phenomena to manifest throughout the zone, as well as mutation of wild animals and some humans. The zone is littered with anomalies such as hazardous phenomena which seem to defy physics and have various effects on any object entering them. Anomalies also often produce items known as artifacts, or objects with special physical properties such as anti-gravity or absorbing radiation. People known as the Stalkers enter the zone in hopes of finding such items for personal or financial gain. While a great number of Stalkers work alone, various factions populate the zone, each with their own philosophies and goals. Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress is a construction management simulation and roguelike indie video game created by Bay 12 Games. The game has text-based graphics and is open-ended with no main objectives. The main game mode, Dwarf Fortress, consists of selecting a suitable site from the generated world, establishing a successful colony or fortress, combating threats like goblin invasions, generating wealth, and taking care of the dwarves. Each dwarf is modeled down to their own body parts, organs, and tissues, as well as having a discrete mind and individual personality, including likes and dislikes, and even possess specific trainable skills in various labors. The second main game mode, Adventurer Mode, is an open-ended roguelike mode where the player starts off as an adventurer in the world and is free to explore, complete quests, or visit old abandoned fortresses. Darkwood. Darkwood is a survival horror video game developed by Acid Wizard Studio. The game features a semi-open world with the player unlocking new areas as the storyline progresses. It also features a crafting system, night and day cycle, trading, and non-playable character interaction, as well as multiple storyline branches which alter several aspects of the world. During the daytime, the player can explore the world and scavenge for supplies at several locations scattered around the biome, and the player must also spend their time repairing doors or barricades around the hideout and crafting new items on the workbench. During the night, the player cannot leave the hideout and must defend against possible intruders until morning. Planning a defensive strategy is key, and players have the opportunity to lay traps and barricade doors or windows to slow down any intruders. Should the player survive the night, they will gain reputation with the trader, which can be used to trade for more expensive items. And if the player dies, they will wake up the next morning without receiving any bonuses. The storyline is shaped based on how the player reacts to the requests and actions of the NPCs, as aiding different ones will lead to different endings and sometimes influence other subplots related to NPCs. And the game features two different main endings, both of which I'm not going to spoil, suck on it. RPG Maker games. RPG Maker is a series of programs for the development of role-playing games with story-driven elements created by the Japanese group ASCII. The RPG Maker series was released primarily in Japan, and they started to translate and release the software illegally in China, Taiwan, South Korea, Russia, and North America with RPG Maker 2000 and RPG Maker 2003. However, most of the later engines translated officially worldwide. Seaman. Seaman is a virtual pet video game for the Sega Dreamcast and is one of the few Dreamcast games to take advantage of the microphone attachment. It's considered a unique video game as it presents limited action, and the player's role is to feed and care for Seaman while provide. God, such a stupid fucking name. Oh my god. While providing him with the company that he needs. In fact, the player is required to check on Seaman every day of real time, or he could die. A portion of Seaman's knowledge is random trivia. When he asks what the player's birthday is, and the player responds through the microphone input, Seaman will then share significant events that happen on that date. The Seaman becomes fairly domesticated, but this does not prevent it from insulting the player or constructing less than friendly remarks. The player is also provided with multiple seamen for breeding and interaction purposes, and over the course of the game, it is required for the player to evolve their semen to different stages in its life cycle, eventually transforming it into a frog-like creature outlined on the disc's cover. SCP video game. SCP Containment Breach is a free and open source indie supernatural horror video game developed by Regalis. It is based on the paranormal fiction stories of the SCP Foundation website, and the game is played from a first-person perspective, and the protagonist is a human test subject labeled D9341, and the goal of the game is to escape from the underground SCP containment center in the situation of a complete security breach, which leads to the escape of other SCP creatures, and you also have to avoid security teams sent in to end the breach. LSD Dream Emulator. LSD Dream Emulator is an exploration game developed and published by Asmik Ace Entertainment for the PlayStation. In LSD, the player explores surreal environments without any objective, and you can only move and touch objects that will warp them to another setting. The game has been described as a playable dream in which the gameplay takes place in a first-person perspective in the 3D environment, with your control limited to moving frontward and backward, turning, strafing, running, and looking behind you. The game was also released on the Japanese PlayStation Store in 2010, and critics have praised its whimsical qualities, with it being cited as one of the most experimental video games of all time. Dig and Rig. Dig and Rig is a 2D futuristic mining simulator that combines resource management with creative building mechanics. It takes place in the year 2032 when a team of scientists decide to explore the Earth's final frontier, the core. The player plays as the Digit 6400, the world's most advanced mining robot, and as the player mines, they extract powerful minerals from the earth and transport them up to the lab via their custom-built rig system. As the minerals reach the lab, they are refined into malleable elements, and then the elements are then used by the player to purchase more rig pieces, upgrades, and more items. Along the way, the player discovers rare fossils, encounters ferocious moles, and eventually reaches the center of the earth. Loop Hero. Loop Hero is a 2021 endless RPG developed by Russian studio Four Quarters and published by Devolver Digital. The game takes place in a randomly generated world where the player changes the world by placing cards instead of directly controlling a character. Each expedition begins with the hero following a pre-generated path in an empty landscape, and slimes periodically spawn along the path, which, when encountered, the hero fights and kills. As the hero kills enemies, the player receives landscape cards, and landscape cards allow the player to place various terrain features around the hero's path, such as mountains, meadows, and buildings. Each terrain feature results in a different effect, such as restoring health to the player, increasing movement speed, or periodically spawning enemies. In addition to landscape cards, killing enemies can also yield new equipment for the hero, such as resources. The player can equip items to increase the hero's attack, defense, health regeneration, and other attributes. If the player successfully defeats the boss, the story progresses, and if the player is defeated while fighting enemies, they lose 70% of their resources and are forced to retreat to their base to start over from scratch. Alright, next up we got Level 6, also called Wizard. Persona 1 and 2. Revelations Persona is the first entry in the Persona series and was released in Japan and in North America for the PlayStation in 1996. Set in the town of Mikage-cho It follows a group of high school students from St. Hermelin High who are forced to confront an outbreak of demons in their hometown and use their personas to fight. Persona 2 Innocent Sin is the second entry in the series, released in Japan for the PlayStation in 1999, and this one is set in the coastal city of Sumaru, and the story follows Tatsuya Suo, a student of Seven Sisters High, as he confronts phenomena generated by reality-altering rumors. Shin Megami Tensei games. Megami Tensei, marketed intentionally as Shin Megami Tensei, is a Japanese media franchise created by Koji Okada, Kusama Kaneko, Genichiro Suzuki, and Kazunari Suzuki. Primarily developed and published by Atlus and currently owned by Atlus, the franchise consists of multiple subseries and covers multiple role-playing games including tactical role-playing, action role-playing, and massively multiplayer online role-playing. While not maintaining as high a profile as series such as Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, it is highly popular in Japan and maintains a strong following in the West, finding critical and commercial success. The series has become well known for its artistic direction, challenging gameplay, and music, but raised controversy over its mature content, dark themes, and use of Christian religious imagery. In Japan, some games in the series do not use the Megami Tensei title, such as the Persona subseries. However, English localizations have used the Shin Megami Tensei moniker since the release of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne in 2003, with the exception of the more recent Persona games. Most of the early games in the series were not localized due to them being on Nintendo platforms, which had strict guidelines about religious subjects and topics in the West at the time. Space Engine. Space Engine is a 3D astronomy program and game engine developed by Russian astronomer and programmer Vladimir Romanyuk. It creates a three-dimensional planetarium representing the entire universe from a combination of real astronomical data and scientifically accurate procedural generation algorithms. Users can travel through space in any direction or speed, and forwards or backwards through time. Properties of objects such as temperature, mass, radius, spectrum, etc. are presented to the user on the HUD and in an accessible information window. Users can observe celestial objects ranging from small asteroids or moons to large galaxy clusters, similar to other simulators as Celestia. The default version of Space Engine includes over 130,000 real objects, including stars from the Hipparcos catalog, galaxy from the NGC and IC catalogs, many well-known nebulae, and all known exoplanets and their stars. System Shock 1. System Shock is a 1994 first-person action-adventure game developed by Looking Glass Technologies and published by Origin Systems. The game is set aboard a space station in a cyberpunk version of the year 2072, while the player assumes the role of a nameless security hacker who attempts to hinder the plans of a malevolent artificial intelligence called Shodan. System Shock's 3D engine, physics simulation, and complex gameplay have been cited as both innovative and influential, and the developers sought to build on the emergent gameplay and immersive environments of their previous games, Ultima Underworld and Ultima Underworld 2, by streamlining their mechanics into a more integrated whole. Critics praised System Shock and hailed it as a major breakthrough in its genre, and it was later placed on multiple Hall of Fame lists. The game was a moderate commercial success, with sales exceeding 170,000 copies, but Looking Glass ultimately ended up losing money on the project. A sequel, System Shock 2, was released in 1999. Postal 1. Postal 1 is a video game in which the main objective of each level is to kill a certain number of hostiles. Enemies range from pistol-wielding police, bomb-throwing vigilantes, SWAT teams, rocket-firing soldiers, and many others. In addition to killing hostiles, each map has a number of unarmed civilians that the player also has the option of killing, and there is no reward or punishment for killing them. Basically, the goal of the game is to survive against waves of enemies while killing or executing as many or as little bystanders as you like. And in addition to the single player campaign, there's also a challenge mode known as a gauntlet and a level editor where players can create their own levels to play. Now, this game is really controversial, mainly because of the addition of being able to kill civilians, and I think it's worth noting that years ago, like I want to say in the 90s, I'm not exactly sure, but when mass shootings started becoming like an actual thing, people called it going postal, which is how the game got its name. Devil Daggers. Devil Daggers is a first-person shooter game developed and published by indie development team Sarath. Players are tasked with surviving as long as possible against swarms of demonic enemies on an arena shrouded in darkness. The player can fire daggers from their fingers to eliminate foes and move around to avoid contact with them. The player dies upon touching an enemy, and as time passes, more threatening creatures begin to appear. Survival times are recorded on a global leaderboard where replays of playthroughs can be assessed and viewed, and the deliberate use of unfiltered textures and effects like polygon jitter and texture warping make its visual style reminiscent of early 3D games released in the 1990s. The game received positive reviews and was praised for its sound design, unique visual style, and challenging gameplay. However, some reviewers noted that during its stages, overwhelming numbers of enemy and visual style made it difficult to understand what was happening. Critics likened the aesthetics, movement, and shooting mechanics of Devil Daggers to Doom and Quake and other first-person shooters of the 1990s. Pathologic. Pathologic is a 2005 role-playing and survival game developed by Russian studio Ice Pick Lodge. The game was released by Buka Entertainment in Russia in 2005 of June, following an English version released in 2006. The player can choose one of 3 playable healers who are listed only by their honorifics, which are 2 men, the Bachelor and Haruspex, and a girl, the Devotress. Only the former 2 are available at the start of the game, while you can only play as the girl after completing a playthrough of the game. Each player has a different listed goal in their quest book, but the player's only necessary goal is to simply survive to the end of the 12 days by maintaining their resources. The game takes place in a perpetual world over a time frame of 12 in-game days, and throughout each day the player receives quests from NPCs. However, the game continues regardless of whether they are completed or not. Caves of Qud. Caves of Qud is an early access roguelike role-playing game set in an open world, and the world is partially pre-made and partially randomly generated. The game takes place in a post-apocalyptic science fantasy setting, and is inspired by the pen and paper role-playing games Gamma World and Dungeons & Dragons. Contrary to other roguelikes, the game has a quest system as a core mechanic, with some of these quests being scripted while others are procedurally generated. Players can choose to follow the main quest line, but can also ignore it and play the game without following the pre-written plot. When creating a character, the player can either select a true kin, who are unmutated humans and have higher base stats and access to cybernetic augmentations, or a mutant who has access to both physical and mental mutations that offer a wide degree of utility. The game has deeply simulated physical and political systems, which are randomly generated and different each session, and it generates a set of historical events and group relationships mostly centered around a set of 5 randomly generated ancient rulers dubbed sultans. Cataclysm DDA. Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, or CDDA, is an open source survival horror roguelike video game and is freely downloadable on the game's website. Prior to playing, the player generates a world which can be shared between different characters. The player then creates a character and is placed into one of many possible starting scenarios, and the player is then free to do whatever they please. This includes both things required from day-to-day survival, such as scavenging, hunting, and finding shelter, as well as larger goals such as farming, installing bionics, making and repairing vehicles, and constructing homes. Eye of the Beholder. Eye of the Beholder is a role-playing video game for personal computers and video game consoles developed by Westwood Associates. It was published by Strategic Simulations in 1991. Eye of the Beholder featured a first-person perspective in a 3-dimensional dungeon, very similar to the earlier Dungeon Master. The player controls 4 characters, initially using a point-and-click interface to fight monsters. This can be increased to a maximum of 6 characters by resurrecting 1 or more skeletons from NPCs or finding NPCs that are found throughout the dungeons. The possibility to increase the size of the player's party through recruiting NPCs was a tradition in all of the Eye of the Beholder series, and it was also possible to import a party from Eye of the Beholder into Legend of the Dark Moon, or from Legend into Dark Moon into Assault on Myth Draenor, so that a player can play all 3 games with the same party. Riven. Riven is a puzzle adventure video game and is a sequel to Myst and the second in the Myst series of the games. The story of Riven, marketed as Riven's sequel to the Myst, is set immediately after Myst. Having been rescued from the efforts of his sons, the main non-player protagonist, Atris, enlists the help of the player character to free his wife from his power-hungry father again. Unlike Myst, which took place on several worlds known as Ages linked together by special books, Riven takes place almost entirely in the Age of Riven, a world slowly falling apart due to Gen's destructive rule. rule. Development of Riven soon began after Myst became a success, and it spanned more than 3 years. In an effort to create a visual style distinct from Myst, director Robin Miller and his brother Rand Miller recruited former Aladdin production designer Richard van der Wen as a co-director. Riven was praised by reviewers, with the magazine Salon proclaiming that the game approaches the level of art. Critics positively noted the puzzles and immersive experience of the gameplay, though publications such as Edge felt that the nature of the point-and-click gameplay limited the title heavily. The best-selling game of 1997, Riven sold 1.5 million copies in 1 year, and after the game's release, Robin Miller left Cyan to form his own development studio, ending the professional partnership of the two brothers. DOS and Amiga games. Amiga DOS is a disk operating system of the Amiga OS, which includes file systems, file and directory manipulation, the command line interface, and file redirection. These are all just early older operating systems that could have been or still could be used to play video games on. C64 and ZX Spectrum games. The ZX Spectrum is an 8-bit home computer which was very successful in the 80s, especially in Great Britain and Spain, where it was the best-seller home computer. It was produced from 1982 to 1985, and the ZX Spectrum is the same as a C64, a keyboard computer built relatively small, 24 by 15 centimeters, and has a hard rubber keyboard and is equipped with less interfaces. Text adventures. Now, it's a pretty simple one. It's like video games, but you just kind of like type out what happens. Steven's Sausage Roll. Steven's Sausage Roll is a 2016 puzzle video game developed and published by Incripair Games. The player controls a character who pushes sausage links to grilling locations on a grid, and the title refers to the game's objective of physically moving sausages. The objective is to grill each sausage in 4 places, but if the sausage is grilled twice in the same spot, or if the sausage falls over the edge of the level, the player fails and must rewind their progress. The player is a low detail figure who holds a fork, which occupies a second space in the grid, and the player can move in cardinal directions, and many puzzles involve rotating the fork around the player. Omicron: The Nomad Soul. The Nomad Soul, known as Omicron, is an adventure game developed by Quantic Dream and published by Eidos Interactive. It is an adventure game played from the third person and side-on perspectives in unarmed combat and the first-person view in armed fighting. The player may explore the three-dimensional environment of Omicron by walking, running, or using vehicles known as sliders, or even taking elevators to reach apartments and offices. The fighting allows players to strafe, jump, crouch, punch, and kick, and special moves can be performed through certain combinations. Reading messages, talking to NPCs, and collecting items are crucial for the player to progress, and they are provided with a computer terminal known as Sneak, which is mostly used to access character information, open the inventory, and retrieve facts that are vital to story progression. Reviewers praised the graphics, soundtrack, story, character models, reincarnation mechanic, voice acting, and combat, but criticized the controls, loading times, and multiple gameplay styles. It was nominated for various awards and sold over 600,000 copies. A sequel was planned for the game, but was eventually canceled. Obscure GOG.com games. GOG.com is a digital distribution platform for video games and films, and I guess you could just see it as like a website for people to publish their games on. The title Obscure GOG Games just refers to any video game that could be published on there. Anything could be on there, bro. Anything. And this brings us to the next one, Obscure Indie Games. One of the examples provided was Strawberry Cubes, and Strawberry Cubes is apparently a game without a goal, and the rulebook simply reads, try pressing other keys. Players attempt to navigate its chaotic, meaningless pixel world with the simple intention of figuring out what's going on and what will happen next. And yeah, it's just a weird game, man. Alright, next up we got level 7, also called Alien. Aurora 4X. Aurora 4X, standing for Expand, Explore, Exploit, and Exterminate, is a science fiction strategy game where players develop their interstellar empire from the humble beginnings on their homeworld to conquer the universe or be pummeled into the ashes of history by any opposing races. Some say it has the graphical charm of software from the late 90s, but it is a playing depth that rivals any other commercial 4X game. Aurora is different because it places an emphasis on fleet operations and detailed tactical combat. The game is under constant development and there's an active and friendly player community community in the forum that will help you with any question or problem that you might encounter. Sad Satan. Sad Satan is a PC game built with the Terra engine, and it was first reported on the YouTube channel Obscure Horror Corner on June 25th, 2015. In the game, the player controls their characters through hallways, and images may appear intermittently and unexpectedly display pictures, taking up the entire screen and preventing the player from progressing any further until the image automatically closes a few seconds later. Most of the images seem to reference child abuse, especially people indicted in Operation U-Tree, such as images of Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris. Other images revolve around crime, including people who were convicted or accused of murder, such as Japanese child murderer, cannibal, rapist, and necrophile Tsutomu Miyazaki, and there are other photographs and beheadings, dead people, that kind of stuff, just shock stuff. The other only characters in the game are children who simply stand in one place and do not move or interact with the player at all, and yeah, it's a weird game. Rape simulators. This one really just speaks for itself. Fucking weird, dude. Temple OS games. Temple OS is a biblical-themed lightweight operating system designed to be the third temple prophesied in the Bible. It was created by American programmer Terry A. Davis, who developed it alone over the course of a decade after a series of manic episodes that he later described as a revelation from God. The system was characterized as a modern x86 by 64 Commodore 64, using an interface similar to a mixture of DOS and Turbo C, and included an original flight simulator, compiler, and kernel. Temple OS was released in 2005 and was last updated in 2017, and has actually received largely favorable reviews in tech communities, and Davis ended up amassing a small online following. Cosmology of Kyoto. Cosmology of Kyoto is an adventure game developed by Soft Edge and published by Yano Electric and released in Japan in 1993 and then in North America for the Macintosh in 1994 and the PC in 1995. It is a game where the player, from a first-person perspective, explores ancient Kyoto during 10th to 11th century Japan. The game lacks a clear goal but is instead non-linear and emphasizes open exploration, giving players the freedom to explore the city and discover many pathways, buildings, situations, stories, and secrets. The game deals with historical, horror, religious, and educational themes and features karma and reincarnation and gameplay mechanics. It's controlled by clicking hotspots and text options when appropriate, and the user also types sentences upon occasion. During the game, the player will often be attacked by evil demons or robbers, and then will go into one of the realms of reincarnation, depending on the player's conduct in that life. And after being reborn, the player must take the clothes from his or her last body to continue, and as the player progresses through the city, new abilities and new items are revealed that protect the player from death. Legacy of Flan. Legacy of Flan is a role-playing video game with unique fighting and leveling system, and the player plays as a group of 4 flans, which are little marshmallow-like creatures, which all have different strengths and weaknesses. While fighting enemies, you can collect drops and change one flan into a new one with new abilities, and this way your group will get stronger and stronger and will be able to fight more powerful foes. Puzzles aren't very hard in the game, and some of them just consist of running around and finding certain items or flans, but apparently the design and the music are good, and you might find it enjoyable. Worlds.com. Worlds.com is a chat room style virtual world made or inspired by a project with Steve Spielberg for a charity cause. In recent years, Worlds.com was coming up because they own 4 patents to various parts of streamlining multiplayer experiences without adding extra bandwidth, and has also sparked a series of lawsuits with the makers of City of Heroes, Second Life, and World of Warcraft. Abashera. Abashera is a first-person maze or platform game, and your mission is to find and sometimes activate the exit by solving different tasks. The maps are filled with very single-minded creatures, and much of the point of the game is to learn these creatures' behaviors. Different dogs eat each other, frogs jump when you move in front of them, you can kill green dogs by falling on them, etc. The game has no linearity at all, and you don't need to solve one map before you can move on to the next. Maps vary greatly in difficulty, and some maps have humorous themes, such as Slaughterhouse, where you're supposed to lead a whole stable full of half-blind purple giraffes into a meat grinder. The maps are built up by 20 by 20 squares, and they can be 4 planes high. You can design your own maps in a separate level editor, and there are a few standout features in this game. For example, if you look down, you see your feet, and there is a function that even lets you lean out over edges in order to look down. Cybernet Worlds. Cybernet Worlds is a 3D universe of multiple worlds that takes you inside the web's most extraordinary 3D environments. When you first enter Cybernet Worlds 3D chat, you will begin as a tourist, and this mode will let you examine the software as long as you like. You will be able to explore dozens of worlds, chat with diverse culture of people from around the globe, and learn to build your own virtual home in cyberspace. The environment is actually a complete 3D world, and you can walk, run, jump, fly, explore, and even interact in the environment by playing games or participating in events. Apparently, Cybernet Worlds is a more imaginative way to meet new people from all around the world, share ideas, build something creative, and have fun. Kanye Quest 3030. Kanye Quest 3030 is a role-playing game published on July 22nd, 2013 for Windows PCs. It takes place in the year 2010, where Kanye West takes out his garbage before tripping and falling into a portal, which brings him to the year 3030. The United States has become a dystopian society ruled by a clone of rapper Lil B, claiming himself to be a god. A prophecy exists claiming that Kanye West would return one day and overthrow Lil B. And with this knowledge, Kanye West travels to this dystopian society and teams up with other musicians such as Jay-Z, Tupac, and RZA to fight and free America. Along the way, you are challenged by other musicians such as Eminem, Nicki Minaj, De La Soul, and LL Cool J, and upon completing the game, Kanye declares himself the one true bass god and returns to 2010, where he throws away the trash. The game is played similarly to the Pokemon series. Each rapper has their own special moves and abilities, and the player is challenged by different rappers wandering the streets and must defeat them to level up and progress in the game. The Void. The Void is a 2008 first-person adventure video game developed by the Russian studio Iceberg Lodge and published in Russia and in other countries, including Poland, by Indie Games on April 17th, 2008. It won the Most Original Game Award at the Russian Game Developers Conference in 2007 and was released in English-speaking regions on October 23, 2009. The Void is played from a first-person perspective. Color, the character's primary resource, exists naturally in the Void as lympha. However, collected lympha of color cannot be used directly and must be processed in the hero's hearts first, where it is slowly drained out, becoming nerva. The color inside hearts also acts as hero's health and stats, and there are 7 colors at the player's disposal: silver, gold, violet, azure, crimson, amber, and emerald, each one having its own properties while inside hearts and how they affect the Void when used. The game has a fixed time limit of 35 cycles, which is the equivalent to 35 in-game days, and new color appears at the beginning of a new cycle. Programming-based games. These are games where you have to physically program the code in order to get your character to do something and just perform any certain type of action. I played a couple of these in one of my computer classes, and we had to code in Python, and it was just, if you're good at coding, it's probably pretty fun, but it is a bitch, man. It's so tedious. But yeah, that's what it is. Mystery of the Druids. The Mystery of the Druids is a single-player adventure game developed by the German company House of Tales and published by CDV Software Entertainment. The game was released in March 2001 for Microsoft Windows. The story takes place in Britain, where Detective Brent Halligan, an inspector at Scotland Yard, investigates a brutal series of murders committed in England. This investigation leaves Detective Halligan into a mystery surrounding the demise of the British Order of Druids and eventually takes him on a trip through time itself. A large portion of the gameplay in Mystery of the Druids consists of discovering clues and solving puzzles, and interaction with non-playable characters is accomplished through dialogue trees. The game received mostly negative reviews, being described as poorly designed, ugly, and rife with bugs, with other statements claiming it was full of unimaginative settings and painful dialogue, and some of the most ridiculous complex puzzle sequences to achieve even the simplest tasks, basically deciding that it has very little appeal for anyone but the most patient and geeky PC head. GameSpot described its characters as rude and its puzzles and dialogue as confusing, and the game overall as surprisingly devoid of plot. However, in a positive review, Mark Hill from PC Zone wrote that the title's closest gaming relatives are Broken Sword and the Blade Runner game, but Druids is far superior to both, and he summarized it as the best serious adventure game in years. Alright, next up we got Tier 8, called Ghoul. Hall of Tortured Souls. This is an Easter egg of Windows 95, and this Easter egg started the rumor that Microsoft might be hiding a satanic secret. However, it is claimed that Hall of Tortured Souls is a horrible way of showing the credits of the creators of Windows 95. Basically, you open a blank Excel worksheet, go down to the 95th row, and select the whole row. Tab over to the column B, go to Help and About, tap on Control Alt Shift, and then click the Tech Support button. Then the game will appear with the window of the name Hall of Tortured Souls. You can use the keyboard to move around in the game and move north, south, northeast, all the cardinal directions. Up ahead on a staircase in the game, there's a wall surrounded by text of the creators. And yeah, there's just a whole bunch of other, it's just a big fat Easter egg. But some people believe it's pretty sinister. Funny Pizza Land. The year this game was made remains unknown, but it is speculated to be either the year 2001 or 2002. Some people describe it as having a disturbing and lonely atmosphere that makes you feel unnerved to play. And the creepiest part is the final section of the game where you enter a castle, which you'll come across a weird moaning snail-like creature, ominous whispering, and among other bizarre things. The fact that little to almost nothing is known about the game emphasizes the creepiness. Kanuguri Soft. I can only find a playlist called Kanuguri Soft and no other descriptions. Everything in the playlist is Japanese, so I can't read it, but the game, it looks like a game. And look, I don't know, but it looks pretty obscure. I couldn't find anything else. Godzilla NES Creepypasta. The NES Godzilla Creepypasta is a fan-made horror story or creepypasta that was written in 2011. Spanning 8 chapters and accompanied by hundreds of screenshots, the story is centered around a possessed Godzilla Monster of Monsters game cartridge that is played by the main character Zachary, whose perspective is told from when he recalls his experience playing the game one night. It notably features many new monsters that did not appear in the original game, along with heavily deformed versions of original bosses. It also introduces a large array of original enemy monsters such as Red, the story's main antagonist, who is eventually revealed to have a deep personal connection with Zack. Drowned God. Drowned God Conspiracy of the Ages is a 1996 science fiction adventure game developed by Epic Multimedia Group and published by Inkscape. The game propounds the conspiracy theory that all of human history is a lie and that the human race's development and evolution were aided by extraterrestrials. The player attempts to uncover the truth through the course of the game by traveling to a different variety of worlds, interacting with historical and fictional characters, and solving puzzles. The true history, according to the game, is that aliens from the Orion area of space seeded humanity on Earth thousands of years ago and have since guided its development, and an ancient, highly developed civilization was lost millennia ago in the Great Flood. Yeah. Pretty interesting concept. iWire. iWire is a game to map the brain from Sebastian Sung's lab at Princeton University. This citizen science human-based computation game challenges players to map retinal neurons, and iWire was launched on December 10th, 2012. In over 5 years, 250,000 people from 150 countries have signed up to play. It's claimed that iWire gameplay advances neuroscience by enabling the reconstruction of morphological neuron data, which helps researchers model information processing circuits. In iWire, the player is given a cube with a partially reconstructed neuron branch stretching through it. Players have the power to extend branches, remove segments, and yeah, it's just a high-tech game, bro. High-tech. Zeda's Labyrinth. Zeda's Labyrinth, or the third game in Horror Tour, is a very rare Japanese PC game released by Caravan Interactive sometime in the span of 1996 to 1998. The first game, Horror Tour, was available for Sega Saturn and PC and came to the West under the name of Zeda's Servant of Shell. In it, you're trapped in a castle area and your goal is to solve puzzles and eventually find the evil demon Zedas and kill him, freeing everyone in the process. The second game was only released for PC in Japanese. It itself was lost until 2014. In the game, you have escaped the castle, but Zedas has been revived by evil followers, and it is less puzzle-oriented, and there's a combat system, and it is more diverse than the first game in that there are much more areas to explore. Not much is known about the third game, Labyrinth, and the old website of Caravan Interactive claims that the game has more than 20 puzzles, and talks about a fairy girl named Ripple, who is seen on the cover. The exact release date is not known, but yeah, it's pretty obscure. Red Dreamcast. What I found on this one was called Red Dog Superior Firepower, which is a video game released in 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast and developed by Argonaut Games. And in Red Dog Superior Firepower, it is composed of 6 single-player missions, 7 challenge missions, and numerous combinations of types of games and maps on the multiplayer mode. And the player controls Red Dog, an armored all-terrain assault vehicle to fight the Hawk, an alien race that has invaded Earth. I think I found the wrong game, but I couldn't find any. I looked up Red for Dreamcast and I just couldn't find anything, man. Sorry, bro. Might be it, might not be. IBM DOS Shell Games. PC DOS was released in 1995 and was the last release of the DOS before IBM software development moved to Austin. And yeah, it's just a form of video games that were played on this really, really old system. Toy Maker. There's lots of footage of gameplay on this video game called Toy Maker, but not much is known about the game itself. It is supposedly haunted. From what I can tell, the gameplay just includes walking down really long dark corridors. 78641. I could not find an explanation for this video game, and I don't really know how to explain it, but apparently it's an adventure game. Alright, next up we got Level 9, which is also known as Ascended. Ecstatica. Ecstatica is a survival horror game for MS-DOS developed by British team Andrew Spencer Studios and released by Psygnosis in 1994. The setting is in Northern Europe in 928 AD, where a traveler who is a player comes upon a town named Tirich, hoping to find food and shelter. However, the town appears to be invaded by demons. The traveler must help the townspeople and lift the curse from the town by freeing the young sorceress Ecstatica from her possession. The gameplay is from a third-person perspective with viewing angles changing automatically. The player has the option of choosing either a male or female character, and the player has the ability to sneak, walk, or run in different directions. The character may carry 2 items, 1 item with each hand, and throughout the game the character is under constant threat from demons. You must fight with your weapons using various moves, and this adds some elements to a fighting game. In addition to action and adventure elements, the game also contains moments of black and crude humor. Polybius. Polybius is an urban legend that emerged in 2000 concerning a fictitious 1980s arcade game. The legend describes the game as a part of a government-run, crowdsourced psychology experiment based in Portland, Oregon during 1981, and gameplay supposedly produced intense psychoactive and addictive effects in the player, also said to have made people commit suicide. It's mainly just an urban legend. Nobody knows if the game actually existed or not, but yeah, it's a pretty interesting story. Gideon Towards God. Gideon Towards God is an adventure game with elements of quest, and the game consists of 2 storylines. At first you have to play for Alan Sparks, the historian for America who is looking for the fabulous City of Rain, and the action takes place in 1979. And the second story you're playing for Gideon, the painted character from the Diary of Sparks who travels to the places of stories about the City of Rain. I couldn't find much about this one. Some of these are very, very, very interesting. Deep Matrix. Deep Matrix is an open source Java server client system capable of both chat and shared events working in conjunction with VRML X3D browsers. Users appear as avatars in a shared 3D scene like the image on the screen, and the latest version of Deep Matrix is composed of Java server and Java standalone client application. The website itself is pretty old and hasn't been updated in a while, so it's pretty eerie to look at. Noctis 4. Noctis 4 was originally based on the DOS and uses a fixed display resolution of 320 by 200. The current version of the game is called Noctis 4, where people playing the simulator could explore planetary systems, and yeah, it's pretty interesting looking. Neftilia. Neftilia is a freeware game for PC by the Japanese indie developer 14. The premise is pretty simple. You are a white, nameless stick figure, and you explore the land of Neftilia, finding cinematics to complete your chart for no real reason, though the emphasis is more on exploration itself than finding cinematics specifically. Apparently the game has an excellent soundtrack. It's another pretty interesting one. Roly Polies. Roly Poly's World Tour is an edutainment games for PC Mac that were released in 1997. The game is directed towards children and feature a cast of colorful animals known as the Roly Polies. They were designed to teach basic concepts like history and alphabet, and although the games were meant for kids, the creator, Osamu Sato, believed that adults should be able to enjoy them as well. Copies of the game are known to exist, but they were probably released in limited quantities and are almost impossible to find as a result. Several Japanese shopping sites have listings for the games, but none of them actually have copies for sale, and the only record of a copy being sold online is at an auction which took place in June 2002, and it is unknown if any other copies have been sold since then. Screaming Mad George's Paranoia Escape. This game was developed by Screaming Mad George, and it's got a very interesting style. It's kind of like a pinball machine, and you travel through organic halls with syringes nailed to the blood-red ground, infected intestines, cockroaches. There's just a whole bunch of absurd shit in this game. Yeah, you should check it out, man. It's kind of hard to describe, but just check it out. Check it out, bro. Alright, next up we got level 10, called God. Electric Highways. Built on the eDuke 32 engine, Electric Highways is a game by Zikov Eddie, set in a virtual world in which electronic music plays a large role in setting up the experience. There's no combat or fancy story to be found here, just visuals for you to look and gawk at. Mondo Medicals. Mondo Medicals is a freeware indie puzzle game developed by Jonathan Soderstrom and released for Microsoft Windows on September 13, 2007, later for Mac OS in December 24, 2010. The game involves a player trying to reach an exit in several maze-like levels by solving counterintuitive puzzles against the backdrop of a surreal narrative revolving around the search for the cure for cancer. After the completion of each level, a short cutscene is shown which depicts the recording of a man loudly ranting, with his incomprehensible speech subtitled in ungrammatical English. Throughout his strange rants, the man tells you how he lost his father to cancer, which has driven him to devote his life to find a cure to the disease, only to finally realize that the only way to cure cancer is to quote-unquote shoot it. In the game's final level, the protagonist finds himself in the room with the man previously seen in the cutscenes who explains, "I will cure you, cancer," before shooting the protagonist. Murder Dog NES. Murder Dog is a pretty interesting game. I think it involves you go to court and you're tried it's like an RPG. You go to court, you get involved with a number of interactions with other people around Europe, I think. But yeah, you kill people. A lot of people. You're a murder dog. Darkseed. Darkseed is a psychological horror point-and-click adventure game developed and published by Cyberdreams in 1992. Unlike most point-and-click adventure games which give the player time to explore, many actions in Darkseed must occur within precise time limits or the game will end up in an unwinnable state. The player has 3 real-time hours in which they must complete the game, which is the equivalent of 3 in-game days. At the end of each day, the character Dawson goes to sleep, and upon going to bed each night, he has a nightmare of the dark world. Dawson automatically goes to sleep at 10 p.m. each night regardless of where the player is. If it becomes night while Dawson is in the dark world, he will fall asleep and die, resulting in a game over. Every room, person, and object in the normal world has a dark world equivalent, and this is often necessary for puzzle solving. Lost Boy TMP.exe. Late in August 2012, an independent game developer uploaded a game called Lost Boy, and apparently it was a dumb little maze game exploration similar to Sad Satan, playing up a spooky or weird angle. The first file was apparently fine, however it was reposted by another user who decided to screw with the file and included a backdoor RAT, and there were reports of people's actual bank accounts being compromised. Schnell Online. Schnell Online seems to be like a VR chat or Second Life type of game, like an MMO social platform. I found some screenshots on 4chan about it. Someone said I was recently on those conspiracy iceberg threads and came across a user mentioning a game based on the dark web called Schnell Online. The screenshot provides a ClearNet link. Proceeding to this link will take you to a basic web page with a download link for a game called Carcass. That's all I could find on it. Unleash Rat Chaos. What I found on this one is it is a browser game developed by Winter Lake, in which a spaceship captain chooses between going about their daily routine or quote-unquote unleashing rat chaos. Couldn't find anything else. Sorry. I tried. Alright, next up we got level 11, also known as Beyond Multiverse. Zeda's Servant of Sheol. Zeda's Servant of Sheol, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is an adventure game developed by Japanese studio Caravan Interactive and published by Synergy Interactive in 1996. It was met with critical reception from viewers. PC Joker's Marcus Ziegler deemed it as quote-unquote shitty. PC Game Center's Al Giovetti commended the high-res, pre-rendered graphics, campy and unusual character designs, voice acting, film-like music and score, and sound design. We know about the sequel that was titled Horror Tour 2, and that one was followed by Zeda's Labyrinth. Yep. Radbad SIS. Radbad.sis was found on a file-sharing website. It is a single exe file that packs a trippy VHS injected experience from decades gone by. Couldn't find anything else on it. Just that, my boy. The Wired. The Wired is an atmospheric puzzle platform game where you must wire up electrical circuits to get through. It is built on a realistic physical model of electricity, and so by playing the game, you will also learn how electricity behaves. It will run on Windows and Mac computers, and needs a keyboard and mouse to play it, and you also need your sound turned on. InkRepair.com. InkRepair Games is a British video game developer based in London, founded and operated by Stephen Laval. And Laval has released over 425 games since 2004, with mostly small freeware games and often at the rate of several projects per month. And a lot of these games are on InkRepair.com. You can find a whole bunch of shit on there, man. Lab.serotonin.phobia. I found a weird website when I looked this one up, and it looks like they have games, but I didn't want to download shit. You hear me? You could look at it for yourself, but I'm not downloading fuck all nothing. Looks like an interesting website though. You might find some shit on there. Ayumi Enhanced Edition. In a future not too far off, space travel has become ordinary and humanity seeks to exploit the infinite riches of the stars. The main character, Ayumi Sasaki, and her family are part of a mining spaceship heading toward a distant star to mine gold. When the lights go out though, Ayumi wakes up to find the spaceship crawling with monsters and blood covering everything, and you have to help her survive as she explores a world covered in darkness. Next up we got level 12, also known as Transcendental Beyond Infinite Everything. This level really has only one showable game. Everything else is just concepts and something that I couldn't translate. Steam Games with 0 reviews kind of explains itself. It's just super new games that haven't really been played yet and that likely can have a whole bunch of fucked up shit inside of it. Along with video games before 1950, I couldn't really find any footage of those, but you could probably assume that they were super basic. Other than that, we have Lucy Horror Story. I found the gameplay of it, but I have no explanation for the game. Is it cool? You think it's cool? Is it scary? I don't know. Some people think it's haunted. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think this video ended up being 3 hours, maybe. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to lick that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.